Chapter 115. For the strong, actual combat would always be the best test. No matter how high level or how famous a secret technique was, if it couldn't be tested in actual combat, it would still be worthless. The recent battle with Rosemary Kalishin's undead army was probably the most intense one since my reincarnation. To me, that was not only an actual battle, it was also a good opportunity to test my abilities and determine my future path of development. There were many problems exposed in the battle. The most obvious one was that my ability system was too complicated. I lacked a killing move that could end the battle in one go, and the combination of abilities and character positioning was slightly messy. Magic and martial arts were often the exclusive rights of long-lived species. It wasn't just because they had enough time to squander, allowing them to climb to the peak of both magic and martial arts. It wasn't just because of their natural talents and stats that allowed them to reach a realm that short-lived species couldn't reach. The most fundamental reason was that they had inherited secret techniques that allowed both magic and martial arts to overlap. The Twilight Blade and Jade Thorn were the most fearsome weapons of the elven race. Those warriors who wielded magic swords wore light leather armor and chose the most suitable buffs and enchantments for themselves. Their long years of training allowed them to not lose out to any opponent in terms of combat techniques. The magic swords hidden in their sleeves were even more fatal. They were experts in adding various abilities to themselves and their magic swords. As long as one made preparations beforehand, the Twilight Blade, which seemed to have a wild fighting style, but was actually cautious and intelligent, was a killing machine that could take on 100 enemies on the battlefield. The Jade Thorn, on the other hand, specialized in all kinds of concealment, sense elimination, and anti-detection spells. Against them, one had to be prepared for the strange situation where the enemy would disappear 4 or 5 times in 100 days. Of course, the prerequisite was that one had to avoid their fatal ambush first. They were the super assassins that gave mages the most headaches. The Blood Tribe's tainted blood demon swordsmen, the dwarves' golden-armored warriors, the demon hunters who were taboo existences, the Black-Winged People's cursed spear dancers, and the most commonly seen and infamous Death Knight, which made all living beings tremble in fear, could be considered as classic troops that had the advantages of both magic and martial arts. Unlike human high-tier troops that relied on equipment and mounts, these special inheritances often appeared in the form of job advancement. They had their own unique ways of fighting and training. It was the accumulation of countless years of the long-lived species, and there was basically no possibility of it being passed on to outsiders. Perhaps there weren't many of them, but once they appeared on the battlefield, they would definitely be nightmares for the non-human kind. Of course, humans have tried their best in this aspect. The Arcane Knight, the gold-rank Mage Knight, was created in this way. However, the Arcane Knight is a notoriously weak job class. Not only does it require a lot of talent, but in order to cast spells, the Arcane Knight can't wear heavy armor. As a melee fighter, the Arcane Knight is weaker than warriors and Holy Knight of the same level. The only skill that the Arcane Knight has is the Fireball spell. That's right, this Mage Knight's forte was the 3-circle fire spell, Fireball. Perhaps it was effective in low-level battles, but in a gold-rank battle, no one would be afraid of a 3-circle fire spell. The supporters of the Arcane Knight had tried their best to argue against it. Together with the theory of fire magic, they proposed that 5 fireballs stacked on top of each other can destroy everything. We don't need any other magic at all. That was how the strange 5-fireball church was born. At the end of the day, it was because magic and martial arts weren't perfectly combined, and there wasn't a clear definition of the role. In my eyes, the reason why the Arcane Knight failed, even though the number of new Arcane Knights doesn't exceed a single digit every year, the 5-fireball church still refuses to admit its failure, was mainly because he split his attention between 2 different fields. He tried to be all-powerful in both melee and long-range combat, but the result was that he was useless in both fields. The reason why those non-humankind succeeded in their job class advancement was undoubtedly because they had a goal and a specialty. Then, they used magic and martial arts to make that specialty blossom. As for abilities that were completely useless to their goal, no matter how useful they wouldn't choose to learn them. The most obvious reason was that those successful dual job classes were all powerful melee fighters or powerful long-range fighters. None of them intended to be like the arcane knight, crushing warriors in melee and blasting mages away with long-range fireballs. In the end, they were crushed by the other party's weakness. One specialty has many strengths. With the specialty as the core, one would realize one's role. Using other strengths to make up for one's shortcomings. Using one's strengths to make up for the specialty. This was pretty much the general thinking of a warrior with multiple abilities. Then, as someone who possessed 4 different powers, if I were to develop them evenly in an attempt to create an all-round warrior, I would probably end up as a useless arcane knight. What am I best at? How do I use other powers to make my strengths into a specialty and make up for my shortcomings? After completing my reincarnation, I had been pondering over this question. Furthermore, I already had an answer. If you had to choose a job, the Death Knight who specializes in soul summoning is definitely the most suitable one for you. If your talent in Holy Light is 10 points, your necromancy would be 20 points, and your swordsmanship would be at least 40 points. Just the combination of necromancy and swordsmanship would allow you to stand at the peak of the Death Knight. Didn't you see how Sheila's strongest Death Knight, Lionheart, took the initiative to become your follower forever? In the end, it is because you have already achieved unprecedented achievements in the field of Death Knight. Pooey, I'm a Saint Knight. I also know ice. Cough. Please don't say that I was the one who taught you ice magic. I can't afford to lose my face. If your talent in Holy Light is 10 points, then your talent in ice magic would at most be 0. 1 point. Back then, my head must have been crushed by a door to have followed your request to teach you ice magic. Let me ask you, after comprehending the essence of ice once again, have you learned a new ice magic? Of course, I haven't. If I had the time, I would rather use it to practice my equipment and research on undead creations. Isn't anything better than this hopeless ice magic? As expected, my straightforward reply caused the enraged, silly cat to pounce at me once more. She started biting down on me. As a teacher, Heloise was quite qualified. Although most of the students she taught were rebellious disciples and perverts, at the very least, she was outstanding when it came to teaching students in accordance with their aptitudes. Even though this kind of advanced personality education was also the main reason why there were more and more weirdos among her disciples. Cough. I can't say any more, otherwise that darn cat would try to take revenge on me again. The feeling of being drenched in milk in the morning was terrible. The last time, I spent an entire morning explaining to Renee, who woke me up with a piece of white paste on my hand. However, judging from what she said about my talent, the darn cat had already told me what I was best at, swordsmanship. Just like how Adam mocked me in the past, while the other Holy Knight's basic function was as a meat shield, using divine arts and holy light to strengthen their defense and support abilities to become the so-called leader of the team. What I was best at was my offensive swordsmanship. In fact, after several reincarnations, my swordsmanship, which was the pride of a warrior, surpassed most sword saints in this world. Without a doubt, this was an ironic joke that left others speechless. Furthermore, it made Adam, who is known as the best swordsman in this world, feel indignant. A great sword saint who couldn't even defeat a holy knight in swordsmanship? One of the best swordsmen in the world? What a joke. However, as he grew, so did I. In the end, I was still able to suppress him. Perhaps what Adam regretted the most during his time in the underground world was that he was unable to defeat me in swordsmanship. But this was to be expected. Not mentioning my decent talent in swordsmanship, the power of swordsmanship was originally a skill. When a skill was honed and raised to the level of art, it was the comprehension of life and the world. These things could be washed away by reincarnation, but it wasn't difficult to pick them up again. From a certain standpoint, I was the true, undying, and long-lived species. While the other long-lived species were extravagantly wasting their time, enjoying 200 years of childhood, I was like the short-lived species, viewing time as life itself. Every day, I was thinking and trying to achieve something. The battles and experiences that I had gone through today were probably more than a dozen Valkyrie combined. When these comprehension and skills settled down, when the accumulated swordsmanship and secrets of 3 lives finally changed from quantitative to qualitative, I didn't think that any sword saint would be able to reach my level. In my eyes, the Beastman sword saints were overly crude and lacked emotions. The elf sword saints pursued the limits of techniques and neglected the cruel essence of the art of killing. If the two were to be combined and trained in the swordsmanship of both races at the same time, perhaps a pure sword saint would appear. As for the dwarven sword saints and the human sword saints, those dwarves actually dared to call themselves sword saints? Just with their dwarven downswing, dwarven rolling blade, and dwarven mountain splitting axe? The human sword saints were even more of a joke. 70% of their abilities were the same as the human sword saints, and they couldn't even use sword energy without their equipment. Normally, I would treat them as a joke. In that case, my future path of development was already clear. I would specialize in close combat swordsmanship, while the other powers would serve as support and bonuses. However, pure swordsmanship would still meet with bottlenecks in top-level duels. Not mentioning those creatures that were immune to physical attacks, the gigantic bodies and thick defenses of great demons, dragons, and other creatures were far too difficult to deal with just the small toothpicks in the sword saint's hands. Otherwise, we wouldn't have worked so hard to help Adam win the inheritance of the Phoenix, so that he could use the Phoenix flames as a support for his swordsmanship. But when I confirmed that close combat swordsmanship would be the core and the other powers would serve as support, I confirmed the direction of my future, and my path became much wider. Sword Dance Ultimate, Flowing Water Swift Sword. Ice magic gathered on the true ice sword. Under the influence of ice magic, the stream-like sword intent transformed into the beautiful ice river of my homeland. That was why I gave a new name. Ice Sword Ultimate, Instant Ice River. The clear and translucent ice sword was as beautiful as a luxurious crystal sword. As the sword path flowed like a river, the sword energy and freezing air that spread out transformed into a beautiful ice river in midair. Then, when reality and illusion overlapped, the water surface and the sea folk in front of me simultaneously became a part of the ice river. In the instant that I was frozen, the proud Naga military officer arrogantly commanded the fishmen and sea beasts to surround me. The fishmen army that swarmed toward me turned into moving ice sculptures. The leaping fishes and waves froze at the very last moment. In front of the instant ice river, not a single living being was able to react at all. Their memories were still frozen at the instant that they were frozen. Under the buff of ice magic, the silver rank swordsmanship that was supposed to be a restraining type turned into a legend rank swordsmanship with incredible offensive power. As far as the eye could see, all the fishmen within a 30-meter radius around me had been cleared. The frozen river water became my best escape route. The first time I fused my sword technique and ice magic together, it resulted in a power that was greater than 3. Even I was shocked. After all, when I tried it in private, I didn't have such a ridiculous increase in power. That's me. If we were to compare our talent in using ice, even the white dragons wouldn't be a match for us. Irene's voice sounded from beneath me. Only then did I come to a realization. Frigid Maw was at the pinnacle of ice and snow creatures. The power of ice and snow that she brought to me was several dozen times that of my current bronze rank body. Furthermore, her control over the ice element wasn't as bad as mine. When I made my move, she didn't just stand by idly. She was helping me adjust and control the ice element, coordinating with my ultimate to adjust the power. This was just like a dual-core CPU operating in parallel, forcefully increasing the might of this move by countless times. All right, I knew that there would be people who would complain that the analogy of a magical fantasy world wasn't suitable. I also knew that if Irene could be considered as the most advanced CPU, I would probably only be considered as an outdated 386. Making do with it a little, wasn't this just an analogy? But at this moment, I realized that I had underestimated the effectiveness of external objects. Indeed, my talent in using ice was terrible, but if I were to teach this to Irene Bela, wouldn't it make up for this flaw perfectly? Similarly, if I were to give the power of death, the power of holy light, and the power of law to other magic pets to boost them and create more secondary cores, my combat strength might increase explosively. Heloise. All right, at this moment, I decisively thought of the omniscient Heloise. However, the current Heloise only had knowledge and techniques, but she didn't have a physical body that matched her past strength and boundless knowledge. It was obvious that she couldn't meet my requirements. The plans for Heloise's 37 modifications regarding the change in color of the 4 limbs, and Heloise's 38 modifications regarding the 3 stages of transformation should be activated as soon as possible. Right, there's also the Super Cat Leo. I can add at least a dozen other modifications, such as adding the ability to grow bigger after eating mushrooms, or the ability to throw fireballs after eating flowers. Hee, that sounds interesting. At this moment, it wasn't the time for me to be thinking about such messy matters. I was already quite close to my destination. While it would feel great to charge into the enemy's ranks single-handedly, doing so would be equivalent to exposing myself to the entire battlefield. If the enemy's commander wasn't a fool, he would send his elites to intercept me sooner or later. As expected, after charging past this street corner, 2 sea giants suddenly appeared in front of me. The gigantic sea giants could barely reach the city walls. Even in the giant family, they could be considered huge figures. Wielding rusty ship anchors as their weapons, they possessed boundless strength. On land, an adult sea giant would at least have the strength of a gold-rank human. In the water, once they unleashed their talent of stirring up giant waves, even a giant dragon wouldn't dare to fight against them. Their most well-known hobby, other than fighting against sea dragons, was to find trouble with large ships. The number of ships they had sunk was uncountable, but the reason for their attacks was often inconceivably simple. Sometimes it was because they wanted to add to their meal, and sometimes it was because they hoped to obtain a good weapon. It was impossible to forge weapons in the water, and it wasn't easy to obtain metal weapons in the sea. Only large ships had large anchors that the sea giants could use, and they could also use the crew to add to their meal. When this unfortunate news spread, some ships even brought along brand new giant battle anchors as payment for the passage. Unfortunately, the overjoyed sea giants would first accept the payment, then dismantle the anchors and use them as backup weapons before using them as dinner. The reason why we didn't keep our promises? Ha! Little thing. Do you know how to communicate with barnacles and sea cucumbers? We don't know how to either. This was a lesson in Maxim bought with his life by a certain intelligent navigator who gave away a heavy anchor as payment for the passage. Giants with coarse skin and thick flesh weren't easy to deal with, and the sea giants, who were born as the sons of the sea, were even more so the giants among the giants. When the 2 giants moved slightly apart, their gigantic bodies blocked the entire street. Following the stomp of the giants, raging waves began to rise. As long as one was struck by the waves, they would definitely shatter on the spot. In the street behind the giants, the Church of the God of Law was shining with a dazzling divine light, and the invisible gallows were filled with the corpses of the sea folk. As the church of a true god in the god's domain, it wouldn't fall before the fall of this city. Bearing the crime of war and genocide, they actually dared to barge into the Church of the God of Law. Should I praise the sea folk for their lack of information and thoughtlessness? According to the rules of the God Wars, after this city changed owners, the god statue would probably be tainted. But at this moment, I didn't have the leisure to worry about my god statue of Womians. The giants were already in front of me. Little worm, don't move. Let Rabaha trample you to death. Knight, yet another tin can. Baines doesn't like tin cans. It gets stuck in his teeth. Being blocked by the giants meant that there was no way out. But at this moment, I had no other choice. Since there is no other way, only the courageous will emerge victorious. The ice dragon's spear spun furiously, and Irene started to increase her speed. My other hand suddenly swung my sword to hit the water, causing huge splashes of water. Useless tricks of the little worm. Scream as much as you can for Rabaha. Rabaha loves to watch the last performance of the little worm. The sea giants in the water were far more agile and powerful than they were on land. With a light grab from Rabaha, a thick wall of waves suddenly appeared on the surface of the water to block the charge. Following that, just as the tip of the spear barely broke through the wall, the giant had already grabbed the tip of the dragon spear that was advancing at high speed. Although the spinning tip of the spear cut his left hand, the heavy anchor in his right hand swung down towards the knight. That's it. How boring. Boom. The giant anchor that was several tons in weight fell, sending rocks and snow flying all over the place. The entire street shook. Where's the little worm? But when the giants realized that their target had disappeared, it was already too late. Under the cover of the waves created by both sides, I, who had long thrown away my dragon spear, had already stepped beside the giants. Secret, blade storm. As I spun, the lowly snow lady who was floating in midair summoned ice and snow, causing a whirlwind of ice and snow to appear. Swordsmanship's secret, blade storm. When using this skill, you will turn into a high-speed whirlwind of blades. The rapidly spinning blades and sword energy will deal heavy damage to all enemy ground troops in the vicinity. At the start, it was just a normal blade storm, but when the power of ice and snow started to overflow from the two swords, it started to leak and erupt, causing the entire world to start snowing. The originally formless sword energy turned into ice blades and spikes under the infiltration of the ice and snow, causing the might of the blade storm to increase exponentially. But this was only the beginning. An even more lethal attack was a pleasant surprise. At this moment, water was constantly being sucked into the whirlwind. As the whirlwind of ice rapidly condensed into ice shards and ice arrows, they were then flung out by the centrifugal force. Due to a freak combination of factors, I mysteriously turned into a spinning top that continuously shot out ice arrows. Under the full support of the Snow Lady Irene, who was in midair, every single ice blade that was shot out at high speed was filled with the power of ice. It was comparable to an ice arrow shot out by a silver-ranked ice mage at full power. The might of a single one of them might not be terrifying, but when the number of them was enough to cover the entire sky, turning everyone's field of vision into a sheet of white, the Blade Storm had evolved from a legend-ranked AoE secret to a saint-rank magic sword secret with astonishing destructive power. The whirlwind of ice continued to spin furiously. Houses, thin ice, lampposts, no matter what it was in the past, under the assault of this concentrated rain of ice arrows, they were all instantly shattered into pieces. When I finally came to a stop, feeling dizzy, there was nothing left in my surroundings. The two incomparably strong sea giants had already turned into beehives with thousands of ice arrows embedded in their flesh. The one who was further away was still breathing, but the one who was closer had his head filled with ice arrows. It was obvious that he could no longer survive. When the giants fell to the ground, and I was gasping for breath weakly on the ground, Kolos, who was riding on a thunderstorm, had already rushed over. "Great Lord, you are fine. Everything is in a mess now. What should we do?" Gritting my teeth, I struggled to stand up. Every second that I dragged on would increase the danger I was in. "Everyone, gather up. Bring along the supplies and rations. We will kill our way out." Chapter 116. When the white-armored Aurora Knight charged out from the entrance of the arena, most of the nobles looked at him as though he was a fool. In their eyes, this knight princess who didn't listen to their advice was already a dead person. Only a few people faintly felt that this knight wasn't destined to die young. Perhaps the next time they met, many things would change. While the retreat was proceeding orderly, Hermit secretly tugged at the White Wolf Guard officer who was in charge of organizing the retreat. If that female knight reaches the line of escape, find an opportunity to kill her. Find a chance to kill her. I'll bear the responsibility. As the most trusted advisor of the Ottoman Empire, Emperor Dasos, and one of the most powerful figures in the shadows, Hermit silently made up his mind. That female knight, who was clearly in dire straits, but still charged forward with a smile, reminded him of the legendary Will of Mist and its past glory. Even though she was the princess of a small country who was clearly at a disadvantage, she was able to gain the upper hand in a series of clashes. He had no doubt that she had the intelligence and ability to turn the situation around, and the reappearance of the legendary Aurora Knight might be a sign of the revival of the various powerful troops in the history of the Mist Country, giving the possibility of turning history into reality. If the East Mist Country were to truly rise up once more, if the 7 kingdoms of the far north were to be united as one country, perhaps that polar bear of the far north would once again dominate the north. Furthermore, his own emperor was infatuated with it, as well as the 10 years of non-war, which made this target seem even more unique. In Hemet's mind, such a unique existence was unnecessary from the very start. Perhaps it was an unnecessary action, perhaps it was a rash act, perhaps it would incur the wrath of his majesty, perhaps it would cause a serious chain reaction if it were to be leaked. But as the advisor of the Ottoman Empire emperor, he felt that this descendant of the Mist would be a highly dangerous target in the future. It was necessary to seize the opportunity to get rid of this unstable factor. Even if he were to be severely punished, it was worth it. This was his unspoken loyalty to the king and the empire. No matter what, I feel that that woman is too dangerous, and I can't like her at all. However, if I were to kill the woman that His Majesty the Emperor likes, I'm afraid that he will turn against me. If the news of me murdering another country's princess is leaked, not only will I be accused of murdering my comrade before the Holy War, but my own people will also think that I'm an idiot who only knows how to fight among themselves. But as long as it's beneficial to this country and Dasos, even if others don't understand, so what if I'm sent to the gallows? From a certain point of view, this chief of intelligence, who always squinted his eyes and had a cunning smile, usually behaved like a playboy. But deep down in his heart, his loyalty to the Ottoman Empire and the emperor had reached an unconventional level where he would give his all until his death. Because he felt that she might pose a threat to the future hegemony of the Ottoman Empire, he had to get rid of her. This was his simple and direct logical thinking. Perhaps it was the result of serious consideration after combining countless pieces of information, or perhaps it was pure intuition. But as the head of intelligence, once Hermit made up his mind, he would definitely act immediately. You guys go too. If it's not convenient for the White Wolf Guard, you guys can do it. If you don't find a target leaving the city, help the guards with the final defense. Don't come back until the mission is completed. As if talking to themselves, several shadows left. The spies began to pass on the target's information, preparing to carry out the dishonorable assassination plan. Just as he turned around and boarded the human-powered carriage that had been prepared in advance, ready to leave first, he found that Dasos was already waiting in the carriage. And beside him, a mage was playing the scene that the mages I had just taken. With just one glance, Hermit was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. What was playing was the words that had just been said. Kill her if you have a chance. And Dasos' face was ashen as he sat there like a puppet. He seemed expressionless, but Hermit knew that this was a sign that he was extremely angry. Just as the young emperor's advisor lowered his head, intending to bear the wrath of the king, he heard the question that was suppressing his strong emotions. The Blood Mage Emperor Marsalit should be able to move by now. Give him a mission for me. Go to the basement of my bedroom and drag out the old man who should be drowning. As he spoke, he also threw him a blood-dripping dragon head emblem. This was the only proof of royal power that could command the demigod blood devourer. What's going on? He doesn't intend to punish me? Hermit's face was full of hesitation. This is a super secret, so if you meet anyone on the way, just kill them. By the way, emphasize to Marsalit that if there's a possibility that something might happen to the old man, remember to give him a stab in advance. Immediately, Hermit understood. Now that the situation was so chaotic, only the super strong could enter and exit the chaotic area at will. Marsalit, who was rebelling with him, came and went like the wind. Even if he brought people with him, how could he be discovered? How was this a rescue mission? It was clearly an opportunity for him to kill with a borrowed knife. My dear Hermit, do you still remember our ideals? I want the Ottoman Empire to stand at the top of the world. In front of it, what is a woman? He still spoke in a businesslike manner. He didn't mention killing anyone, but the words squeezed out from between his teeth indicated that he had already made up his mind. Desos was the only one who signed the contract. Under the intentional or unintentional forgetting, the two sides agreed that their hostile actions were only aimed at the country. They forgot that personal safety was involved. If his subordinates acted on their own and used a borrowed knife to kill someone, or if a demigod unintentionally killed someone to silence them while carrying out a mission, the contract wouldn't care. Moreover, in the eyes of the contract and in Desos' own heart, he didn't give any orders. Everything was his subordinates' reckless actions. Since she isn't fated to be mine, then her remaining identity can only be that of my enemy. If I can't get her, no one else can. Even if he couldn't hear the voice hidden in the deepest part of the emperor's heart, the king's trust in him from the bottom of his heart, this way of giving up everything for the sake of righteousness, had already moved the usually indifferent hermit to the extreme. This was the disposition of a hero that he worshipped and swore loyalty to. This was the Winter Wolf King who was fated to lead the Ottoman Empire to the top. Yes, your majesty, you definitely won't be disappointed. Ding. The host has killed a sea giant. The reward is 198 fate points, special spoils of war, the soul of the sea giant and the sea giant's smelly socks. The soul of the sea giant. For 10 minutes, sea giant battle soul possession. Strength +5, agility -2, grants the ability to breathe underwater and control giant waves. As for the sea giant's smelly socks, you could try to make a raincoat with it. It's definitely waterproof, and it can even increase your stats. As long as you don't have a nose or a slow sense of smell, you won't die from a stench. Ding! Congratulations to the host for creating a Saint-tier demon sword esoteric, ultimate sword cyclone. Your physical body has once again achieved a breakthrough, strength +1, agility +1. Legendary sword art esoteric, Bladestorm. Using this skill, you will become a high-speed rotating Bladestorm. The rapidly rotating blade and sword aura will severely injure all enemy ground troops in the vicinity. Usage prerequisites: 20 strength, 10 agility, 15 vitality. Saint-tier demon sword esoteric, ultimate sword cyclone. This skill is the evolution of Bladestorm. Only a sword saint who has completely mastered Bladestorm can attempt to learn this skill. Using this skill, you will become a high-speed rotating ice storm. The rapidly rotating blade and sword aura are only the first wave of attack. The intense cold, air, and ice arrows will bring the final destruction to your enemies. This skill is extremely powerful and has a large area of effect. Usage prerequisites: 22 strength, 15 agility, 20 vitality, 15 intelligence. The complete form of Ultimate Sword Cyclone requires the help of Frigid Maw and Irene Bela. The notifications from the system made me happy. After breaking through to 20 agility, the racial talent I received was even more eye-catching. However, I didn't have the leisure to appreciate it. The intense dizziness and exhaustion caused me to be unable to stand up straight. Although the power of the upgraded Ultimate Sword Cyclone has increased greatly, the usage requirements have also increased greatly. I have barely reached this basic requirement, but there's a hidden requirement that I can't avoid no matter what: basic rank. Swordsmanship esoteric doesn't mean that the stronger the better. The most suitable one is the best. As a bronze rank, it is already difficult for me to forcefully use the legend rank sword esoteric by relying on my basic stats and sturdy physical body. If I were to jump another rank, it would be no different from seeking my own death. Through the system's quantification, the basic information of the swordsmanship is clear at a glance. A strength-type swordsmanship esoteric requires strength to increase its lethality, agility to maintain the speed, accuracy, and balance of the attack. It also requires vitality to deal with the recoil and impact, so as to prevent one from accidentally killing oneself. As for intelligence, it is obviously a requirement for magic. Every time I increase my rank, it is actually the support of my basic stats. The current me even though I have barely reached the quality requirement of my basic stats. In terms of quantity, I'm still far from it. At this moment, both of my hands are injured by my own sword aura. Even with Irene as an external mana storage, the little amount of mana I have is still wiped clean. My physical strength is so weak that my head hurts endlessly and I feel nauseous. The reason why I didn't directly kill myself is because Irene helped me deal with the recoil of my mana. Furthermore, my mastery of swordsmanship has already reached a whole new realm. Even after putting in so much effort, this ultimate sword cyclone still isn't at its full power. Under the limitations of my current physical body, the original ultimate sword cyclone's power and duration is less than a third of its original state. This advanced version of the Saint rank magic sword esoteric is probably not even a tenth of the full version. Otherwise, under my Saint rank swordsmanship's profound meaning, a gold rank human sea giant would have been killed in an instant. It wouldn't have ended up with only one dead and one injured after the water and earth ice arrow's power was boosted. In order for the magic sword esoteric to be truly effective, I probably can't slack off on my swordsmanship and magic. Based on my current condition, my swordsmanship can only wait for its rank to be upgraded before it can become stronger. On the contrary, my magic is the real headache. After I return, I will immediately activate the Heloise modification plan. However, the most important thing right now isn't to think about the future or imagine the full power of the ultimate sword cyclone. If we are unable to overcome this obstacle, we probably won't have a future. With Kolos's help, all right, with her support, let us ignore the mysterious glare not too far away. Kolos, can you let me walk by myself? No, Lord, don't force yourself. I'm not forcing myself. Your clothes are already drenched. Thinking about it, you are a girl now. You are the one who is forcing yourself. You are obviously an elf. Isn't it scientific to have such a domineering body? The curves in the water are obvious. When some unscientific body parts touch me, it is tempting to commit a crime. Do you understand? The natural herbal fragrance at the ends of your hair smells nice, but makes me waver. Do you believe it? Not too far away, deer and moose are already crying in envy. Do you realize it? More importantly, when I remember that your soul is that of a male, I really want to find a pillar to knock my head against. Do you understand? All right, before the vengeance on the other side materializes, I return to the Church of the God of Law. A faint silver light emanates from the church. That seemingly gentle radiance blocks the river water that is infused with God power. From Kolos and the others, I find out that the two sea giants aren't here to stop me. They are only here to stop all living people who are advancing to the Church of the God of Law to seek refuge. Before I return, they have already exchanged blows with Kolos several times. There are many other small sea folk squads like this. Their goal is to stop important people from hiding in the Church of the God of Law. In reality, the sea folk and their subordinates have no intention of attacking the Church of the God of Law. In fact, there is no need for them to do so. The church is the land of God. The land of God is free from all harm. This is the power of a true God. But it is a pity that as the city falls and the believers of the God of Law die, the Kajisi branch of the Church of Law, which doesn't meet the minimum requirement of the Church of Law, will fall into a church. In that case, they don't even need to do anything personally. The river water will be sufficient to solve all problems. Furthermore, the statue of a true God of the church will become the best sacrifice to please the malevolent gods of chaos. But even though the sea folk who trespassed were punished by the God of Law and hung on invisible gallows, the interior is still a mess. What reassures me the most are the few trailers placed in the main hall. They aren't god equipment or treasures, but the most important things at the moment: rations, medicine, and other necessities. It is impossible to bring much rations with us during a battle. The remaining rations in the underground base are what we have left behind in our luggage. The engineers and the others won't be able to support us for long. So, the moment we return to the surface, I get Kolos to secretly gather rations. If contracts could be perfect and flawless, if the law could prevent all crimes, perhaps this world would have become a peaceful and fertile land long ago. How could I rest in peace in a land filled with enemies. I had been prepared to retreat from the very start. Now, sufficient rations are neatly prepared on the trailers. As long as we can reach the underwater base, we will be able to attack or retreat at will. We have already achieved a strategic victory. Are you ready? Yes, Lord. We can start anytime. If it wasn't for you insisting that I go change my clothes, we could have started 10 minutes earlier. Lord is the most inflexible. How annoying. All right. I ignore the cute complaint that makes me want to bang my head against the wall. I won't force you to change out of your wet clothes. Even if most of the people left behind are gentlemen with unique tastes and won't do anything, Renee and the others who are filled with resentment will really eat me alive. Renee, isn't it just that my figure is slightly better than yours? Is there a need to stare at me with such envious and jealous eyes? What you should be worried about is your back. Look at Callie. She's writing notes on your back. A new supplementary lesson plan is brewing. Obviously, this isn't the time to think too much about it. Looking at the Seafolk elites gathering outside, I made up my mind. Then, let the great trial begin. Kolos raises the semi-god equipment grimoire in her hands and announces loudly, I, the Bishop of the Ottoman region of the Church of Law, Koros Eindan, a real name that has long been forgotten by everyone, hereby declare that villains are running amok in this city. A genocide and an unjust war are happening before our eyes. In the name of our God, Womians, we shall judge all crimes in this city. Primordial Codex Fragment Page, a replica of the god equipment. After the god of law ascended to the throne, it was greatly strengthened. Faith in law. 169/2000. Every 1,000 people's faith will increase by 1 point per week. A maximum of 50 points per month. When the number of points reaches 1,000, 1,000 points can be used to duplicate the Primordial Codex Fragment Page. Effect 1, 3, Slight. Effect 2, Great Trial. Active consumes 100 points of faith in law in one go and consumes 1 point every minute thereafter. When a user activates it, everyone in the city will be subjected to the judgment spell equivalent to that of a legend-ranked judge, judging the crimes committed in the past 3 hours. If guilty, one will be subjected to restrictions on freedom, invisible shackles, weapon lock, and many other negative effects. In the Great Trial, the effects of all executioner's law incantations will be doubled, and their rank will temporarily increase by 1. Prerequisites. This city's laws are chaotic and villains are running amok. This city is on the verge of destruction. Following the declaration, the silver light of order first transformed into a pillar of light before spreading outwards. Countless cries of alarm sounded out. The Seafolk who were enjoying the massacre were obviously annoyed by the effects of this unprecedented law incantation. Although it's still impossible to save them, restraining them like this might give the commoners more chances to escape. There's a time limit for the Great Trial. Let's head out now and rush to the entrance of the underwater base before the effects disappear. At this moment, the 2 frigid maw had already transformed into the heavy ice boar form, which was suitable for heavy armor charging. Renee and I would be the spearhead of the escape convoy. Feeling that my rank had been temporarily increased by 1 rank due to the Great Trial, I finally recovered some stamina and magic power. Patting my mount, I took the lead and charged forward. I still have 68 faith points left. Does that mean 68 minutes? In the past, it only took 30 minutes to get there. I wonder if that's enough. Forget it. God's plans are always inferior to man's plans. I'll just do my best and leave it to fate. Indeed, God's plans were always inferior to man's plans. Changes that I couldn't have expected had already happened. Other than the Ottoman semi-god mage who was carrying out a secret mission in the rain, the battle between semi-god Hydra and Valkyrie at my destination was getting more and more brutal and intense. The sky was torn apart and the river water was emptied before filling up again. The seafolk who were swept into the river were instantly vaporized into nothingness. In order for the convoy, which was fully loaded with rations, to enter through the passage on the ground, the 9-headed monster blocking the only path was a barrier that was impossible to bypass. Hurry up, we'll be safe once we reach the base. Our convoy had just broken through the blockade at the entrance, but we didn't know that there was a huge monster in front of us. I feel that things won't go so smoothly. Silly cat, shut up. Otherwise, I'll learn from the great Demonis and really turn my magic pet into a crow so that you can call all day long. HM? That seems like a good idea. A 3-phase transformation pet fairy. It's you, Heloise. Chapter 117. Holy silver light shrouds the entire city. In the Great Judgment, the sea folk who are currently encircling the remaining Ottoman forces finally meet with some trouble. Along with Crow's declaration of judgment, the silver pillar of light continuously emits flashes of brilliance that represents order. Every city slaughterer who has died red by judgment is struck by the flashes of light and is punished by the power of law. Based on their crimes, some of them have their movement restricted, some of them have their weapons taken away, some of them are shackled, and some of them have all 3 types of shackles. There is more than one type of shackles. The most common one is handcuffs. If the crime is serious, leg shackles will be added. If the crime is even more serious, it is not impossible for the entire body to be tied with iron balls. As it is a semi-god equipment's area of effect judgment without a source, it only consumes the stored faith force. The restraints on each individual target are not too strict. The material of the handcuffs is not much stronger than pig iron. Any beastman warrior might be able to easily tear it apart. Perhaps this is nothing to a true expert. However, to the low-tier fishmen, it is fatal. Every army has the most cannon fodder. The number of fishmen at the lowest level of the sea folk invading army is undoubtedly astronomical. They're the main force that can cause the most damage in this situation. Furthermore, their small bodies are bound by iron chains, handcuffs, and iron balls. Not many of them are able to move. According to the post-battle statistics, in that 1 hour of the sudden restraints on the invaders, at least 70,000 to 80,000 civilians escaped from the hopeless situation. This is even more of a help to the warriors. In a battle between 2 warriors, if one of them is suddenly restrained, even if the restraint only lasts for 0.1 seconds, it is still a decisive opportunity. This is the effect of military-level strategic forbidden spells, including magic and divine arts. Perhaps it might not be able to affect a semi-god or myth-ranked expert. However, as long as it appears on the battlefield, it can completely change the situation of the entire battlefield. What the 2 Chaos faction true gods did is a country-level, perpetual, strategic forbidden spell, Blessing of the Sea God, City of Rain Felohi. Country level and military level are only differences in the effectiveness of extraordinary magic. There is no difference between the two. Emperor Yongy's Ice Aeon is only a military-level spell. However, that attack can wipe out a city and turn hundreds of kilometers into an ice field. It is even more terrifying than most country-level forbidden spells. No one would be willing to be hit by it. The biggest difference between the two is probably the area of effect and the duration. Military-level spells have obvious effects, but the duration is short. However, this City of Rain will only change the environment and will not cause any direct damage. However, the duration is probably forever. But because of this, country-level forbidden spells often require extra sacrifices and sacrifices, which is rarely seen in history. National forbidden spells like this often happen. This time, the sea folk and the true gods had sacrificed so much. Of course, they wouldn't do it just for a piece of land. The dark clouds in the sky would continue to spread, and the City of Rain would continue to expand its territory as time passed. Within its range, other than the dry areas designated by the user of the forbidden spell, the other areas would become the new territories of the City of Rain. Although the speed of expansion is extremely slow, as long as the water elemental goddess, who is the source of magic, doesn't die, there is no possibility of this expansion stopping. This will always be the biggest problem for the Ottoman Empire. Perhaps countless sea tribes are already on their way here. As new tribes move in and their territory expands, Rainland will sooner or later become a country of the sea tribe. It is just like the cancer cells on a cancer patient. The longer it grows, the more dangerous it will be. By the time it really erupts, it will already be too late. That's why when I discovered the effects of this forbidden divine art that is obviously the work of a true god, I unhesitatingly gave up on the possibility of turning the situation around. Right now, the only possibility of turning the situation around is to kill the caster of this forbidden divine art. Even if the caster is foolish enough to not hide in an absolutely safe place, it is likely that a true god's caster appears in front of me. This isn't someone that I can deal with in my current state. Although my Law Faction's Great Judgment series was also quite strong, it was only a support-type forbidden spell that could be used against armies. It wasn't very effective against enemies. The strongest part of this forbidden spell was its ability to raise Law by 1 rank and double the effects of Law incantations. But right now, without enough Law job classes, this forbidden spell wouldn't be able to display its full potential. This is also the main effect of its design. Perhaps it isn't much right now, but this forbidden divine art with strict requirements can be activated by duplicated god equipment pages. As long as every city's Law job class can have it in the future, perhaps any empire or race will have to reevaluate the risks and costs of starting a war. And when such a fact was gradually recognized by the world, the small and weak countries would undoubtedly increase the number of Law job class members, promoting the rise of the Law faction from another direction. And when the Law faction truly rose to power, when the power of Law was equally effective against Order creatures that had crossed the bottom line, and when the fact that Chaos creatures could also learn and control Law was discovered, perhaps this new power of the Order faction would reveal its true colors as a neutral faction. Thus, in order to obtain the best marketing result, I intended to design the best opportunity for it to make an appearance instead of standing on the side of the loser in this battlefield where it is destined to lose, becoming an additional decoration on the crown of the victor. However, what I didn't expect was that the moment this forbidden divine art that was destined to be ineffective was activated, it would achieve astonishing results. Roar, roar, roar. The roaring Hydra's 9 heads are all in a frenzy. He is frenziedly spitting out venom, flames, ice, and lightning, but he is unable to hit the agile opponent in front of him. As for Longtu Basra, he appears and disappears from time to time in the void. Every time he appears, the floating Dragonslayer spear will shatter one of the dragon heads. Even if Hydra in the water is able to quickly use his powerful regeneration ability to regrow the dragon heads, the blind angle caused by the loss of the dragon head is enough for the Dragonslayer spear to take the opportunity to chop off another dragon head. Even if the regeneration ability takes effect a few seconds later, Basra doesn't hesitate to look for his next target. That is because he knows that when his Dragon Seal ability takes effect, Hydra's regeneration ability is no longer limitless. The Hydra roared furiously, but he was still unable to break free from the chains. Furthermore, the strange chains were getting closer and closer to him. Not only was he unable to use the transfiguration technique, it was also gradually cutting off his connection with the river. If this continued, his regenerative abilities would run out sooner or later. Hydra is roaring in rage, but he is also terrified. As an ancient sea monster, he can faintly see his own doomsday. Originally, the two sides should have been evenly matched, but the reason why the situation has become one-sided is because of the 40-minute Great Judgment. Actually, at the start of the battle, Hydra has the absolute advantage. Due to the activation of the True God's forbidden spell, Basra was forced to make the first move. After losing the advantage of being an ambush hunter, he naturally fell into a disadvantageous position. But when the silver light of order descends, the situation is reversed yet again. Now, a gigantic chain is tied around the 9-headed dragon's body. Although the 9-headed dragon's body is powerful, it is still unable to break free from the chains that should have been incredibly weak. Now, the chains are flashing with a dark golden light, and runes and magic arrays with special effects against dragons are faintly discernible. It is evident that this is a top-level divine weapon against dragons. Looking at the bizarre scene before me, I am stunned at first, but then I come to a realization. Perhaps due to a freak combination of factors, the reason why Longtu Basra is almost invincible against dragons has finally been discovered. As a Valkyrie, When Basra was still a relatively ordinary Wood Elf Ranger, he advanced to the Twilight Blade class. Their specialty is to target their opponent's attributes and abilities, giving themselves and their own weapons the most suitable buffs. And obviously, Basra is still a Twilight Blade, and he is still an expert in weapons enchantment. It is just that his specific enchantment is obviously an extraordinary Dragon Slayer special effect that normal Twilight Blades would never be able to learn. This is also the reason why he always carries a large number of Dragon Slayer weapons with him. Then, the reason why the situation has developed to this point is obvious. When the gigantic chains and shackles fell from the sky, how could Basra, who has been through countless desperate situations, miss this opportunity? He immediately used his ability to enchant the chains with Dragon Seal, Dragon Bind, and Dragonsa, forcefully turning the gigantic chains that Hydra could break free from at any time into a super dragon-fighting artifact that can bind semi-god dragons. Not only that, the chains are already bound to Hydra's body. No matter who did it, Basra, thank you. The rest is simple. The originally balanced situation has completely lost its balance. Basra gave the Undying Hydra a good beating, and just as the Undying Hydra is about to rise to the sky, we charged forward and finally arrived here. In front of us, even though the chains are tightly bound, the ferocious nine-headed dragon is still not to be underestimated. This mountain-like beast occupies half of the river, and every time its dragon head fails to break free and crashes into the ground, it will cause an earthquake in the surroundings. The dragon breath that the dragon head spits out easily shatters the mountains in the distance. And Basra, who has the upper hand, is obviously more powerful. With a casual wave of his hand, the sword at his waist floats in midair before enlarging into a dragon-slaying greatsword. Lightning sparks fly everywhere, and the magical runes that represent dragon slaying appear on the blade of the sword. As the greatsword swings down, the gigantic dragon head spits out poisonous blood and falls into the river. To be honest, looking at a battlefield of this level, I really feel like turning around and leaving. Based on our current strength, we would die mysteriously if we were to get too close to a battlefield of such pinnacle strength. However, the position of the Hydra happens to be blocking the entrance to the underwater base, making it impossible for us to avoid it. Wait for Basra to obtain victory? It's hard to say who will win and who will lose. The Great Judgment should last for less than 20 minutes, and as long as the time is up, all the shackles of sin will disappear on the spot. And no matter what Basra did, as long as he is still enchanted, the enchanted weapon itself will disappear, and the enchantment effect will naturally disappear as well, and Hydra will definitely regain his freedom. As for hoping that the battle will end in just 20 minutes, in a battle between semi-gods, if the two sides aren't too far apart, it is possible that the battle will last for several years. If Hydra is so easy to deal with, he would have long since been bound for 40 or 50 minutes. Hydra's innate natural talent of regeneration is the reason why he is known as the king of prolonged battles. I glanced at the caravan behind me and silently unsheathed my sword. However, I have no intention of having anyone else participate. In such a situation, even if it is a classic saying that the braver one will win when two sides meet on a narrow path, for this to happen, the difference in strength between the two sides must not be too great. Otherwise, the braver one's sacrifice will be meaningless. Since a battle of this level means death if one gets involved, then the only way is to think of a way to avoid getting involved at all. This is the toughest test of one's vision, combat experience, and agility. Our strongest, Kolos, might have reached saint rank thanks to the forbidden spell, but a battle of this level is definitely not something that she, who has never experienced battles between semi-gods, can participate in. Charge! Let's kill that evil dragon. That enemy is worth fighting. Just as I was thinking about it, Renee seems to have misunderstood my action of unsheathing my sword, which gave her an inexplicable courage. She actually slaps her steed and charges forward first. Damn it! Stop saying death fault, what the dead often say before they die. Hurry up and come back. There is a reason for Renee's confidence. At this moment, Renee, who was raised to silver rank by the system's cheat, had barely managed to reach gold rank after receiving Frigid Maw. After being raised to legend rank by the forbidden spell, her unprecedented strength made her feel that she is omnipotent. Along the way, the wanton slaughter of the powerful sea folk gave her an inexplicable confidence. But if I were to say it, any silver rank veteran would be able to easily beat up this legend rank, who is immature in all aspects. Just as I was about to stop him, a blood-red figure blocked my path. It was a red-robed archmage. He had a head full of silver hair, and his face was as red as a baby's. He had a kind and gentle smile on his face, making him look like a benevolent elder. The legend rank Aurora Knight is indeed brave and skilled in battle. As expected of a knight princess, I am the Ottoman state teacher, Marcelet. Under the orders of the Emperor, I am here to protect the princess. Let me lend her a helping hand. I can make use of this opportunity to exact vengeance for Damus. Following the raising of his staff, a scarlet-red light shone on both sides. Under the buff of Berserk Bloodlust, Renee increased the speed and might of her charge. On the other hand, the attack directed at the nine-headed dragon was a venomous blood loss curse. In an instant, the dragon head that was trying hard to regenerate spat out a large amount of poisonous blood, causing the regeneration to fail. The Blood Mage Emperor, Marcelet? Why would he be here? If it was anyone else, they would have thought that he was a kind-hearted person. However, my heart was filled with wariness and surprise. This Ottoman state teacher has always kept a low profile and appeared as a good person to the outside world. However, history had exposed the true face of this murderer and poisoner. Just as I mentioned before, as a master of water magic, an unorthodox variant of blood magic, he had long viewed other living beings as a living blood bank. He loved the blood of women and infants the most. The crimes he had committed were too numerous to be recorded. Even if he were to be executed 100 times, it wouldn't be considered too much. As for taking revenge for Damus, that was even more ridiculous. Back then, when Hydra first appeared at this location, he had indeed killed Dragon Hunter Damus, who was guarding the exit, and severely injured Marcelet, who was attacking the sea folk on the fleet. However, in history, the two of them were undeniably mortal enemies. Marcelet disregarded the price he had to pay to cultivate the depraved and evil blood magic in order to take revenge on Damus. He should be happy that he had died. The sudden appearance of the murderer and the lies he spouted made me raise my guard. At this moment, Renee had already rushed to the edge of the semi-god battle zone. Naughty brats really get carried away easily. Damn it! Get out of the way! Above my head, a crow was silently flying in circles. Even though it was raining cats and dogs, it was unable to wet its wings. Those blood-red eyes were filled with hatred and resentment. Chapter 118. Guardians of the Forest? I have no idea where those fellows popped out from. Then, they started talking about protecting your family's forest. If you were to chase them away, not only will you lose your forest, you will also lose your manor and your old horse. How are they guardians? They are obviously a bunch of bandits, an unlucky fellow who lost his own forest and manor. As a radical nature protector, Drool's reputation has never been too good. As a former guardian of the forest, a radical Drool organization that tends to protect nature and vegetation. Even though she has been intentionally avoiding her past experiences, we are still able to guess many things. Judging from the heavy makeup that she has been putting on recently, she is most likely a wanted criminal on the surface with a guilty conscience. Also, judging from her outstanding fighting skills and strength, the bounty on her head is probably quite high. However, at this moment, I can't help but feel grateful for the sharp reflexes that came from her rich combat experience. Kolos, under the support of a blood mage, the reckless brat has already reached the edge of the semi-god battlefield. Subconsciously calling out Kolos's name is the only possibility of saving her life. Fortunately, Kolos doesn't disappoint me. Just by calling out her name, she knows what to do. Lightning Cage. As a derivative of the 4 great elemental magic wind magic, lightning magic is famous for its high attack power from the very start. Unlike fire magic, which is also one of the two great cannons, which has high attack power and a large area of effect. Lightning magic is famous for its high speed, high frequency, and suddenness. Different from elemental mages who can directly control the power of the elements, Drool has two ways of controlling lightning. One is direct control, similar to mages, and the other is indirect control of nature and the weather. Although it has many weaknesses, such as inconvenient control and the need to calculate in advance, lightning descending from the sky is more powerful and has a longer range. Furthermore, its concealment and suddenness make it impossible to guard against, making it the first choice of the Storm Drool. As a Storm Drool who was once proficient in summoning lightning, the dark clouds covering the sky actually increased his strength greatly. The temporary Saint rank Kolos gives up on chanting and uses her will to guide the dark clouds to send down lightning. The moment she chants the name of the divine art, 17 consecutive lightning bolts strike down, forming a lightning barrier. However, the barrier isn't the enemy, but the blindly charging knight. 6 Circle Storm Drool Divine Art. Summon a barrier made of lightning to block and hinder the enemy's movement. In its original state, there are 6 lightning pillars, which can be lengthened and widened according to the user's ability. Once the barrier is touched, the lightning will explode. In a lightning storm, what you want is definitely not an umbrella, but a lightning rod. What? You're holding a lightning rod, but you're hit? All right, I'll be straightforward. The lightning rod refers to a foolish spearman who runs around on a rainy day with a spear. Remember to recruit spearmen with a high salary and buy insurance for them. It's everyone's responsibility to protect spearmen. Please support the automatic insurance plan to protect spearmen. TSS, 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 TSS. With the temporary Saint rank buff, the original 6 lightning bolts became 17, and 15 of them only played the role of blocking the path. Only 2 of the weakest lightning bolts struck right on top of Seiji's head, using the swimming plasma to remind this naughty child that she had touched the edge of the most dangerous bottom line. Unfortunately, although the Aurora Knight was one of the very few top-level magic pet knight that could achieve telepathy with her mount, Renee was also one of the very few noob knight that didn't have any positive effects. Instead, she would affect her mount's judgment and actions. TSS, 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 TSS. Frigid Moss Shiva, who had already discovered the lightning cage, hurriedly stopped. Renee, who didn't react in time, wanted to charge forward. Under the clash of 2 wills, the originally successful wild charge still took one more step forward and directly crashed into the lightning barrier, causing the lightning bolts to explode. The lightning bolts wandered around Renee and Shiva's bodies. Judging from the pitiful screams, they were at least medium rare. Everything that happened in the next second proved that it was indeed worth it. Not far away, a dark green ball of venom suddenly landed on the ground and corroded the ground. Without a sound, a 5-meter wide hole appeared in the ground. The 9-headed dragon's 18 eyes had no blind spots at all. His field of vision was incredibly wide. Even though his physical body was tightly bound, how could he not notice our arrival and Renee's charge? And so, the venom-spitting dragon had casually spat out dragon breath, which was more than enough to deal with her. If Renee hadn't been stopped by the lightning cage, based on a 9-headed dragon's precise calculations, she would have been hit by the ball of venom and corroded into nothingness. If it wasn't for Kolos's timely reaction, I would have been thinking about what I should write on this naughty brat's grave. This foolish princess's dream was to be like the main character in a legendary knight's novel, charging towards a gigantic dragon. It was a pity that she only met a windmill, until that day when she met a semi-god 9-headed dragon. She realized her dream and proved her courage. Then, she charged toward a semi-god, so what then? Let's just say it like this. Renee Chin Mist died in AD 1897 at the age of 14. Cause of death: poisoning from a knight's novel. But at this moment, I didn't have the heart to discipline her, because there were more troublesome matters to deal with. Seeing that Renee had escaped from death, the Ottoman state teacher Marcelet in front of him had a look of pity on his face. The only thing missing was a "why didn't I die" expression. What a pity. If I had succeeded in my charge just now, I might have been able to deal a fatal blow to the evil dragon. Fatal blow? A newbie knight who had barely reached the gold rank in terms of overall combat power against a semi-god Hydra? Even if I managed to hit him, I would probably be ignored. This shoddily made-up story that didn't use my brain at all, this worry that was so fake that it was a complete insult to my intelligence as the one being deceived. But in reality, there was no need for me to guess the other party's intentions. He was here to scheme and murder. Evidence? This city was currently in the Great Judgment phase, so it was normal for him to suddenly appear. However, from the moment he cast the Berserk Bloodlust spell on Renee, his body was covered in a layer of bright red light of sinners. This was the judgment of the judgment spell for attempted murder. Why did he want to find trouble with Renee? Didn't he want to kill Roland? Actually, after I tore off my clothes, I dashed back to the church in an ice armor, almost naked. After which, I changed into a male knight's attire. The ice armor covered my face, but it was obvious that I was a male under the heavy armor, so it was impossible for me to be mistaken as a male. On the other hand, the mission that Marcelet received was kill the Shadow Princess of the Mist Royalty. She is an Aurora Knight, and her overall combat power is around gold rank. Previously, Renee's strength couldn't be hidden from the true experts. She didn't even reach bronze rank, so how could she advance to silver rank or Aurora Knight? Thus, from the very start, Marcelet treated Renee as the Shadow Princess Roland. At this moment, Marcelet thought that his actions were hidden and that his position was high, but he didn't notice the fact that he had been exposed. After all, he was an archmage dressed in a blood-red robe, and what he practiced was blood magic that was filled with blood-red aura. This red light was long ignored by him, and the negative effects of great judgment couldn't even break through his defensive magic. However, it is good that you are fine. He was still trying to defend himself, but I didn't have the intention to expose him. On the contrary, I nodded my head in agreement. Yeah, I almost. Princess Renee would have been able to make a name for herself. What a pity. She is a true legend. Wearing the helmet of ice, I played the role of a simple-minded and crude knight perfectly. The information that I accidentally leaked out further confirmed Marcelet's guess. He rubbed his chin and nodded his head in satisfaction, as though he was satisfied with his intelligence and acting skills. At the same time, I used the phylactery of the Lich on me to ask Rosemary about the intelligence and weaknesses of the state teacher. After all, he is a semi-god, and the strongest person on our side, Kolos, is only a pseudo-saint rank with 10 minutes left. No matter how I looked at it, it wasn't worth it to fight him head-on. Even though I heard that he is heavily injured, a semi-god is still a semi-god, and he definitely isn't easy to deal with. Even if it is just a counterattack before his death, it is more than enough to drag us down with him. Weaknesses? How can a person like him have any weaknesses? Fine, don't pull my phylactery. Let me think about it. He really doesn't have any weaknesses. Even if he is heavily injured, he is still able to absorb the blood of others to recover himself, forcefully maintaining the vitality of his physical body. His survivability is extremely high, and if we are unable to kill him, his revenge will definitely be fatal. Wait, you're saying that he is relying on sucking blood to maintain his mobility? His body isn't filled with his own blood and bodily fluids? After getting a positive answer, thinking about this, I came up with an idea. Anyway, there isn't any loss. Let's give it a try. Thus, the face under my helmet revealed a simple and honest smile exclusive to a pure holy knight. Ottoman state teacher Margolint. Along the way, we eliminated a general of the sea folk and picked up a bottle. Someone said that it is a god equipment. You are knowledgeable. Can you help us take a look? In the distance, Renee had already rushed back on her horse with a pale face. Marcelet retracted his gaze, as though he was looking at a prey. Hearing my words, Marcelet smiled. It isn't Margolint, it is Marcelet. Do you knight whose muscles grow all the way to your brains know what a god equipment is? It really is a little weird. Let me take a look. The ancient bronze bottle was filled with the scent of history. Although there wasn't a single ripple of magic, it seemed to be made of brand new materials. This meant that time didn't mean anything to him, and it also proved that it was extraordinary for it to have transcended history. It really is a treasure. It is a pity that the original god of the god equipment has fallen and the god power of this god equipment has been exhausted. The remaining use of it can only be considered as a toy with some special effects. Let me study it for a while. When the matter at hand is over, I will reward you handsomely. Judging from the gleam in his eyes and the malicious smile on his face, I can guess that in Marsalet's eyes, all of us are already dead people. Thus, the generous reward he would give us is to send us to a comfortable death. Thank you, Lord Ma Beer. I'm lacking a wife. My hometown, Xiaofeng, has been waiting for me for many years. Not Ma Beer. Forget it. You can call me whatever you want. However, right after that, the blood mage focused all of his attention on this ancient bottle. The attractiveness of a god equipment to a mage was self-evident. Even though it was already worn out, if he was able to study a bit or two of the secrets of the gods, Marsalet's power would probably increase explosively, especially since this god equipment originated from an ancient sea god. The blood magic that Marsalet trained in was a branch of water magic, which made it even more attractive to him. We finally managed to study something. I laughed. So that's how it is. Let's activate it and see. The god equipment was activated and a blue divine light enveloped the semi-god blood mage. Then, countless amounts of blood spurted out from his body, turning into streaks of red arrows that shot into the distance. Due to the large amount of blood loss, the already heavily injured Marsalet lay unconscious in the water. Stonevilla's ocean bottle, the legendary god equipment of the ancient sea god. It was said that in ancient times, it was capable of stirring up endless waves. Stonevilla was the husband of the water elemental god Alos, who had created this desperate situation. Although this ancient god equipment had lost most of its power due to the passing of the ancient god, it still retained one of its abilities. Stonevilla's ocean bottle. Upon activation, it can restore the liquid around the user to its most basic state. This was the result of the system's appraisal. It sounded confusing, but it was actually easy to understand after using it twice. Actually, this god equipment didn't have much use. It could only restore a mixture of liquid back to its natural state. For example, if you were to mix a bottle of seawater and river water, under normal circumstances, it would be impossible to separate them. However, if the god equipment was activated, it would be able to separate them into a bottle of river water and a bottle of seawater. After losing the support of a true god's divine power, this was basically the most useless god equipment in history. However, at this moment, this weakest god equipment in history had done a great service by directly killing off a semi-god. Marsalet's entire body was covered in other people's blood. Blood magic was a branch of water magic, so naturally, blood was also a type of liquid. As a result, under the effects of the god equipment, the other people's blood returned to where it belonged, directly returning Marsalet to his original state of being unable to move. Furthermore, due to the backlash of magic and the sudden loss of blood, his current state was probably even worse than when he was heavily injured by the nine-headed dragon. Sometimes the retribution of the unjust came just this quickly, and the manifestation of justice was just this simple. I viciously punched the face of the villain who had attempted to murder Marsalet and smiled in satisfaction. After that, I stared blankly at the bottle that had fallen into the water. Around the bottle, the omnipresent flood had dissipated. Obviously, even if it was a city of rain created by a divine power forbidden spell, it would still be restored to its natural state by this god equipment. Wasn't it said that due to the existence of the two goddesses of creation, the ancient world was a female society? So it turns out that the water elemental god Alos was a husband. Of course, this was just a joke. However, from another angle, it proved that, from a certain standpoint, the ancient sea god Stonevilla's divine power was indeed able to suppress the water elemental god Alos. I vaguely understood that this god equipment left behind by the previous husband of the water elemental god was probably the key to dispel the national forbidden spell, City of Rain. Let's not talk about how we have already fallen out with each other. Why should I help the Ottoman Empire to dispel this problem? Right now, the ocean bottle of Stone Villa, which has lost its divine power, can only maintain a space of around 2 meters. How can it possibly resist against the entire forbidden spell of the gods? However, it was very useful now. I kept the bottle and placed it in my bosom. Under the influence of the god equipment, the surrounding space became clean. Even though we managed to defeat that unlucky bloodmage so easily, the problem before us still remained. If we didn't settle everything in the remaining 5 minutes, we might not even have the chance to escape from the enraged, 9-headed dragon emperor. Since I don't have enough power, let's try my tricks. Heloise, can you help me contact Lone Basra? Chapter 119. Picking up an old man? Didn't you ask him if he knows how to refine pills, or if he has a few decades, or even 100 years of cultivation to find a successor? At the very least, you should have asked him if he has any godly weapons, or if he has a wealthy and beautiful young daughter. After knocking out Marcelet, the first thing I did was to send out Heloise to transform into a bat. She held her former milk bottle, Stonevilla's ocean bottle, in her mouth to ward off the rain and act as a temporary aerial scout. Since Marcelet was able to find us, it was definitely possible for other assassins to follow us as well. However, even if there were royal secret agents following us, I didn't think that they would be able to avoid Heloise's detection. After all, in such a heavy downpour and flood, even a high-level lurker would be able to remain invisible. However, it would be impossible for their bodies to vanish. If they were to move underwater, a strange hole would probably appear in the water. It was the same for mages' invisibility. All sorts of camouflage and camouflage abilities would be greatly reduced in water. Vanish in the day? Your wet footprints are still here. Camouflage? Sorry, the color faded. Next time, remember to buy some high-grade waterproof paint. The one who used invisibility. The water is all over your body. Are you planning to cosplay as a water elemental? What was gratifying was that Heloise didn't find any other scouts. That meant that there was probably no one else. When she reported that she found a white-bearded old man on a tree not too far away, I couldn't help but think of the classic scenes in the night novels of the past. Thus, I asked the question at the top of the page. After all, in night novels, picking up a white-bearded old man out of nowhere was usually the start of the protagonist's rise to power. For example, some old man, some god, or some senior expert. It really is fate. He really does have a wealthy daughter, and she has long been interested in you. What? Desos Min. This old man is Kraven Min. He is the previous emperor of the Ottoman Empire and the elder brother of your cute junior. What? Aren't you going to pay your respects to father-in-law? Your snack quota for tomorrow is gone. If you don't shut up, I'll turn you into a drooling dog and replace all your daily snacks with dog biscuits. Expired ones. As expected, Heloise was instantly rendered speechless by this threat that could very well come true. Even though I said that, I was overjoyed. Without a doubt, I had picked up a big fish out of thin air. It seemed that Marcelet was here to bring the former emperor away. However, as long as I could escape from Kajisi, just the news of the old emperor's existence would be enough for me to play countless tricks. Sure enough, it's just like in the Knight Rider novels. If you kill a monster, you'll drop a treasure. Sigh, for a demigod to end up like this, it's really tragic. The blood mage Emperor Marcelet had been thrown to the knight accompanying him. Under the system's determination, despite being a demigod, he didn't have a single semi-god equipment. The few decent equipment he had didn't even reach the epic rank. However, that blood-dripping dragon head emblem was something that I coveted. Blood Dragon Royal Emblem, the emblem of the Emperor. Although it represents the highest authority of the Ottoman Empire, it is nothing but trash in your hands. However, a certain emperor would probably look forward to obtaining it again. After all, other than being an object of proof, this emblem made of a special metal has many undiscovered secrets. While sighing at how poor this boss was, I turned my attention to a spot not too far away. A gigantic, 9-headed dragon was blocking our escape route. That was the crucial point. Darn it, the coastline is so long. Why do we have to come ashore here? However, I also knew that this wasn't purely a coincidence, nor was it my luck acting up again. Rather, it was a result of a freak combination of factors. More than a month ago, the Ottoman Empire had stationed a large number of troops here, including semi-gods. As these unlucky fellows posed too much of a threat, they were chosen by the nine-headed dragon emperor as the first wave of attack. Although they were both semi-gods, the nine-headed hydra evolved into a semi-god. Nine-headed dragon emperor wasn't something that a human semi-god could deal with. Back then, the human semi-god was instantly killed. After that, the nine-headed dragon emperor didn't seem to have any intentions of coming ashore. Instead, it acted on its own in the river. Now that it had come ashore, naturally, it would come ashore here. The moment it came ashore, it was blocked by Basra. Thus, after a series of unforeseen events, he was like a mountain blocking our path, leaving us helpless. The battle on the other side was still extremely intense. Basra had the upper hand in all aspects. All kinds of Dragon Slayer and Dragon Sealing God equipment appeared one after another, slashing the head of the immobilized nine-headed dragon emperor until it was bleeding profusely. However, the problem was that top-tier creatures like the nine-headed hydra were known for their tenacious vitality and their ability to regenerate. It was said that even a nine-headed hydra with only one head left would be able to fully recover within 3 days. If it was really torn in half, it would still be able to regrow into 2 smaller bodies. For an existence at the level of the nine-headed dragon emperor, as long as it was near the water, its regenerative ability would be able to operate normally. Basra had the body of a Valkyrie that didn't know fatigue. He intended to destroy the nine-headed dragon emperor's dragon head over and over again, exhausting its regenerative ability to fight a war of attrition. He could afford to wait, but we couldn't. I knew that once the great judgment was over, the nine-headed dragon would immediately make a comeback. At that time, there would still be a chance for us to fight this battle. Charging forward would be no different from sending us to our deaths. However, was there any way to win without a direct confrontation? After racking my brains, I really found an unorthodox method. Loaned to Basra, and the god's envoy of the god of law. The one who cast the forbidden spell is also on our side. Let me tell you a piece of bad news. The effective time of the forbidden spell is almost up. In 5 minutes, that chain will disappear. If I didn't guess wrongly, the nine-headed dragon emperor will also awaken. The outcome of the battle will be back to square one. Very soon, this city will fall and the sea folk will come ashore. I don't think you have the time to waste on it. The bat form Heloise landed in midair, not too far away from Basra. Under my coercion, she carried out the basic duties of a tamed demon and sent a message on my behalf. I have a plan here, but it is obviously against the rules. It will depend on your decision. If you are willing to execute it, nod your head. The plan is like this. We will help you block that foolish snake for a short period of time. You just have to hurry up. After explaining the plan, I hesitated for a moment. However, I still didn't want to let go of the prey in front of me. In the midst of battle, Basra nodded his head fiercely, agreeing to my plan. The next moment, he raised both his hands and lightning gathered in his hands. Following which, the dragon spear on his back swelled up once more, to the point that it was almost the size of a small boat. Following which, lightning was infused onto it. Under the glow of lightning, it turned into an indestructible lightning spear. However, it wasn't too late. Following Valkyrie's summon, a portion of the dark clouds parted and a sliver of moonlight descended. As the god of moonlight, Valkyrie, Basra could only use his full strength under the moonlight. The lightning spear was infused with a pale white, unique energy. The tip and the edge of the spear were coated with a layer of silver light. It seemed unremarkable, but in reality, it was a gift from a true god. With the addition of the moonlight blade and the blessing of the god of hunting, the might of the giant spear increased exponentially. Ain's spear of destruction. Even though the nine-headed dragon struggled violently, the sea monster stirred up a torrential river. At this moment, the waves rumbled and lightning flashed incessantly, as though it was the end of the world. However, no matter how hard the Hydra struggled, it was still unable to move in the face of Basra's dragon chain. Roar, roar, roar. Even though the Dragon Slayer roared furiously and the mountains shook, The lightning spear that seemed slow but was actually fast still struck the nine-headed dragon. Roar, roar, roar. I curse you. I curse you to never be redeemed and freed. I curse you to always be in the nightmare of losing your loved ones and never be able to sleep peacefully. Damned butcher. Under the Dragon Emperor's cries of pain and curses, 3 dragon heads were severed. Countless green, poisonous blood spurted out, and the surrounding water turned into a fatal venom that devoured flesh and soul. Your screams and curses are my best lullaby. After that, Basra floated over to us without even looking at the results of his battle against the nine-headed dragon. I could only helplessly order Irene Bela to charge forward, intending to replace Valkyrie's position. Sigh, it's almost done regrowing a dragon head in 19 seconds. This nine-headed dragon is truly difficult to deal with. As expected, the moment I entered the nine-headed dragon's defensive range, lightning, flames, venom, and icicles were all aimed at me. Even though the nine-headed dragon was still screaming in pain and cursing Longtu for his misfortune. Even though 2 of the nine-headed dragon's heads were still spurting poisonous blood, the other 7 heads had already recovered their combat strength. This is the benefit of having many heads. Should I go back and modify Abe? Times are changing, and the 3-headed Cerberus is obviously outdated. 12 Cerberus shouldn't be too many. It's a pity that Abe is currently in his rebellious phase, so he probably won't accept my modifications. Not only did he reject my nickname, he even said that he wouldn't accept my modifications even if the world were to be destroyed, even though the previous enhancements were all pretty good. He even forced me to cancel the function of automatically crowing at 6 o'clock every day. As the army commander, it's important for me to supervise my subordinates to do morning exercises on time. Haven't you heard of the story of dancing at the sight of the rooster? Did he shrink back after being called a void rooster? Didn't I get called a void rooster every day? How useless, right? Why don't I try adding a few more wheels to him? It seems that transforming is quite popular these days. The 4 destructive dragon breaths were right in front of me, but I was still thinking about something else. This wasn't because I was looking down on my opponent. The nine-headed dragon emperor, who had been through countless battles, was an experienced veteran. The dragon breaths had chosen the best spots to land. The 4 dragon breaths landed in 4 different directions, and they just happened to intersect with each other. If nothing unexpected happened, no matter how I dodged, I would have died. But since I didn't die, something unexpected happened. The galloping ice warhorse suddenly vanished and transformed into a miniature young snow woman who sat on my shoulder. Right after that, she spread open her golden wings and flapped them with all her might, transforming the momentum of my charge into propelling me upwards. I, who had transformed into a war angel, suddenly shot up from the ground. As a war angel, controlling the order Holy Flames was a racial talent. At this moment, the holy flames on my wings and forehead instantly evaporated the raindrops. The heavy rain didn't affect me much, but I didn't dare to stop flying. I abruptly rose higher to avoid the next chain of attacks from the nine-headed dragon. As expected, a few seconds later, the place where I was previously was completely covered by the lightning storm and the sudden increase in the flood. This was common knowledge when fighting with top-tier combat power. Against an enemy who was excessively agile and had great concealment abilities, it was best not to tangle with him. Instead, it was best to throw a large AoE attack to destroy him and any possible hiding places he could be. If Renee was in my position, even with my abilities, she would have died long ago. Being able to predict the enemy's attack methods in advance was undoubtedly a huge difference in combat experience. But now, while I was spinning in midair to avoid the dragon's attacks, I was continuously sending ice magic attacks at the nine-headed dragon. Yes, ice magic, and it was a bronze rank magic that was below the 3rd circle. Ice magic, the type that the nine-headed dragon could ignore the most. Of course, now that I had temporarily risen to silver rank, I should be able to use 5th circle magic. But it was a pity that I didn't know a single 4th circle or 5 circle silver rank magic because I didn't want to waste my skill points. If I lacked in quality, I would make up for it with quantity. My random ice arrows and the ice shards that I casually formed could also be used as artificial hailstones to rain down from the sky. But it was a pity that beneath the hailstones wasn't the fragile glass of a car, nor was there a car owner who wanted to cry because he forgot to buy insurance. The innate water magic of the ancient sea monster below was in no way inferior to any top-tier water mage. Ice magic was inextricably linked to water magic, and the nine-headed dragon's ice dragon head was an expert in freezing magic. My meager amount of hailstones wasn't enough to deal with it. However, when that ice dragon had completely ignored my attacks and even showed a look of disdain, the nine-headed dragon's main body met with a little trouble. A frightening blue color appeared on his skin, and a thin layer of ice actually formed on his body, causing him to enter a frozen state. He really is tough. Even if the system didn't say that he couldn't resist the freezing air, he still managed to resist half of its effects. I never did things that were meaningless. From the very start, that seemingly meaningless attack of mine was actually me doing my best to prevent the effects of the freezing air from activating. Freezing air, a type of soundless and fatal cold air. It can be attached to the physical body and weapons, and it can also be used together with ice magic. Anyone who comes into contact with it will have their movements slowed by 1%, and they will receive 1 point of ice damage per second. This effect can be stacked. If the movement speed is slowed by more than 20%, the target will be frozen, their thinking will become rigid, and many other negative effects. If the movement speed is slowed by more than 50%, the target may die at any moment due to hypothermia. This ability wasn't particularly powerful, but it had the advantage that no living creature was immune to it. Of course, I didn't expect to be able to freeze an ultimate creature like the nine-headed dragon to death, but this super disgusting negative effect of freezing and slowing down even the target's thinking and reaction speed would be effective in helping me complete my dangerous mission. Meanwhile, on the other side, the battle was also nearing its end. Are you willing to follow the gods' laws at all times and fight for the sake of law and justice? Kolo's voice was trembling with excitement. Performing a special ritual for the semi-god Valkyrie wasn't something that any ordinary bishop would have the opportunity to do. That's right. From the very start, my goal was quite clear. Since the only one on our side that could threaten the nine-headed dragon was Basra, then increasing Basra's combat strength was the best choice right now. And as long as he had a law job class, he would be able to increase his power by 1 rank in the Great Judgment. As for semi-god, increasing his power by 1 rank, fine, it was impossible for him to reach the level of a true god, but it was quite possible for his combat strength to explosively increase to the point where he could easily suppress the nine-headed dragon. Of course, according to my calculations, this excessive power would also cause the Great Judgment to end prematurely, which wasn't something that Valkyrie's body could withstand. In the end, it would most likely result in mutual destruction. However, Basra was already a dead man, so why would he care about this? The only thing he was worried about was whether or not he could kill this dragon. But right now, even with the help of the God Equipment page, in order to grant Basra a level 1 law job class, he still had to follow the procedure and finish chanting that long prayer. Besides, the ritual was a holy one, so naturally, it couldn't be moved in the slightest. And the nine-headed dragon wasn't an idiot either. The ice mage who was able to freeze him midair was obviously stalling for time, while his mortal enemy, the butcher, was doing something unknown. It was obvious that it wasn't a good thing for the nine-headed dragon. And so, he unhesitatingly raised all 9 of his heads, and a berserk dragon breath gathered on each of his heads. If he really let them all out, not only would Kolos and the others die for sure, the entire pier would probably disappear without a trace. No matter what the situation is, no matter what schemes they have, let's just attack first, then think about it later. I like this way of thinking because I've always been like this. Heloise, Plan C. Let's give him one. Chapter 120. The violent storm didn't show any signs of stopping. Not far away, the slaughter and screams of shock were coming to an end. Just as the Sea Tribe was about to obtain their new capital, Our journey of escape was also coming to an end. The nine-headed dragon in front of us opened its bloody mouth, causing the remaining 7 dragon heads to spit out 7-colored dragon blood. Meanwhile, all sorts of destructive magical powers gathered together. Under the careful control of the 9-headed dragon, the 7 dragon breaths finally formed a colorful, floating ball of light. This was a lethal ball of elemental energy. This was the specialty of multi-headed dragons. Soon, when all the magical elements finally merged into one, the colorful ball of light finally became pure, and a light that could destroy everything would be born. This was how top-tier magical beasts fought. They abandoned all useless tricks and did their best to strengthen their physical bodies and race's natural talents. From the looks of it, the dragon breath with multiple elements would finally condense into a non-elemental shockwave. With the 9-headed dragon emperor's power level, although he didn't have 2 dragon heads stacked on top of each other, he was already comparable to a forbidden spell. A powerful physical body and a powerful natural talent attack were the foundational reasons why a top-level creature, like a dragon, would be able to crush everything. When fighting against them, who were always unreasonable, it was still up to one's power to speak. Judging from the magical waves, I estimated that if this attack hit, not only would everyone here be destroyed, even the entire pier area would be destroyed. Do you think that you're the only one who knows how to use it? Heloise, Plan C, given the first attack. Queen, I can't do it. What? Queen, I also want to use it, but do you think that I don't need time to prepare? At least give me 5 more minutes. Can't you understand that reinforcements need to be late? How can a hero rely on reinforcements at such a critical moment? Do it yourself. Don't count on us supporting characters. I believe in you. Hearing her retort, which sounded rather modern, I made up my mind not to tell this silly cat any more nonsense. But at the same time, I was truly helpless. There wasn't enough time, so it was understandable that Heloise wasn't prepared. But if this combined dragon breath was used, there would probably be no need for any plans. After all, nothing would be left. Damn it. Big guy, look at this. I took a deep breath. I had no intention of charging forward and directly landed on the opposite side of the cliff from where Kolos was. What I was going to do next would probably be completely meaningless with my wings. Original Sin Fiend Celestial. The moment I retracted my wings, a strong sense of exhaustion from dispelling my war angel form engulfed me. I didn't even have the time to sigh about this, as the light of chaos that followed transformed me into another form. Original Sin Demon God. The angle of my vision suddenly increased by a few centimeters, as if I had suddenly become much taller. My breath carried the smell of sulfur, which was the mark of a demon. Her originally white skin had turned into an ugly layer of light blue magma. Strange magic runes kept flashing in accordance to her breathing rhythm. She seemed to be an elemental life form. My chaos bloodline caused blue lightning to run amok in my veins. Then it shot out from the magic runes. The overflowing energy caused the rainwater in the air to evaporate. Lightning flashed in my eyes. When it finally stabilized, I looked as though a demon god had descended into this world. I didn't like this transformation at all. Apart from the fact that the power of chaos had a bad reputation and might bring me trouble, it was also because this final boss form of a villain was truly ugly. It always reminded me of the dark history of being a lich and scaring myself by looking at a mirror in the middle of the night. But right now, I needed this ugly transformation. Although it was ugly, it was indeed powerful and not warm at all. Spirits of ice and snow, storms of the polar regions, listened to my command. If the War Angel form was a high-speed charge-type transformation, which was suitable for powerful melee combat, then this original Sin Demon God form would strengthen magic control, willpower, intelligence, and other magical abilities. It was a classic magic transformation. Under my will, the end of the rotten old era and all creation shall soon come. A long incantation brought with it the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. Spirits of ice and snow sang in the air as the top-level ice forbidden spell, Ice Aeon, appeared. Different from Marguerite's knockoff version, the copy of Ice Aeon didn't even have a third of the original's power. But as the creator of this forbidden spell, I was able to bring out 200% of its power. The theory behind this forbidden spell was extremely simple. It was to use the purest ice and snow magic to crystallize and repeatedly compress it before blasting it out. It was no different from a fireball, but just like what Heloise had said before, because it was simple, it was pure. Because it was so pure that there was nothing else to it, it matched the essence of ice and snow, making it powerful. Semi-God equipment, Dark God's Breath of Death. Special Effect 1. Soul Conversion. Extract the souls of the dead and convert them into pure death magic. Death magic entered my hands, but it was forcefully converted into the purest ice and snow magic. Should I thank Callison for the massacres and the many years of accumulation? Countless souls created this semi-God equipment to store a large amount of magic power, and this was exactly what I lacked the most at the moment. Winter's dormancy is death, but it is also rebirth. With me as the core, magic power overflowed from the raised black scepter. Along with the incantation getting louder and louder, the blue magic runes that represented ice and snow spread across the entire land. The ice and snow spirits dancing in the air were singing in unison. Before I even made my move, the entire cliff had already turned into a land of ice. The pouring rain in the air had already turned into a heavy snowflake. The summer wind that was supposed to be warm and humid had already turned into a bone-chilling storm. Furthermore, as the temperature plummeted, a thin layer of ice started to form on the surface of the flood. For the first time, the endless flood met its natural enemy. Finally, the two dragon heads that had finished regenerating raised their heads. The moment they came to life, they stared at me. Their huge eyes, which were the size of adults, shot out an angry red light. That was undisguised killing intent. This distance, and the snowflakes were unable to obstruct their line of sight. They were assessing the threat that my magic could pose to them. In the eyes of the nine-headed dragon, as long as they could get rid of Lone 2 and those annoying chains in one fell swoop. So what if they were hit by that forbidden spell? It wasn't the first time that Furo's Hydra had been hit by a forbidden spell. In any case, their skin was thick and they wouldn't die. In just a few days, they would be able to completely regenerate. However, with just a glance, he knew that the situation was different from the past. Their regeneration ability was a racial talent, but it was also a comprehensive ability of water magic. Furo's was confident that as long as there was water, he wouldn't die. However, what would happen if there was no water? Water mages would usually train in ice magic to increase the lethality and flexibility of their spells. However, this didn't mean that there was no conflict between these two types of magic. On the contrary, pure water mages hated ice mages the most. Water mages usually took the form of water arrows or huge waves. Fundamentally speaking, it was the control and usage of liquids. Thus, they had two natural enemies. Fire magic, which represented high temperatures, would evaporate liquids. On the other hand, ice magic, which originated from the same source as water magic, represented low temperatures and would turn liquids into solid ice. Regardless of whether it was water vapor or ice, if they weren't in a liquid state, they wouldn't be able to fit the concept of water. That would break their foundation. The nine-headed dragon Furos pondered, but the more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was amiss. It was obvious that the spell in front of him was an ice forbidden spell. Without even making a move, it was able to cause a natural phenomenon to resonate with the elemental spirits. It was obvious that this was the unique characteristic of a super forbidden spell. Although the mage in front of him didn't have any magic undulations, bronze rank magic meant nothing to him. The black rod was releasing an endless amount of magic power. Furthermore, the ice mage was able to freeze him, who had an extremely high magic resistance. This had already proven his outstanding aptitude in ice magic. If this forbidden spell were to successfully freeze him, would he be able to enjoy the rest of his life in a block of ice that would never thaw? His regeneration ability wouldn't be of any help in such a situation. Hydra, who went into the fridge and forgot to come out? I can even collect some tickets to the exhibition. This joke wasn't funny at all to him. If he were to take it a step further and freeze all the surrounding water, rainwater, and his own bodily fluids into ice, then his regeneration ability would be crippled. It was possible for him to be frozen into an ice cube, shatter into ice shards, and die. Furos didn't think much of the human's forbidden spell, Nine-Headed Dragon Emperor. However, the more he looked at it, the more uncertain he became. Under the feet of the mage, the frozen ground suddenly split open. The barrier between the void and reality was opened, revealing a huge hole that resembled a demonic abyss. Then, a gigantic black skeletal hand rose up and pierced into the sturdy ground. Just a single finger bone was the size of an adult. However, this was only the beginning. The true nightmare was returning to the human world. As the giant, pitch-black skull returned to the human world from the underworld, even though the skull with the crown on it had a ghastly smile and a strange kakaka sound, all living beings who saw it instinctively screamed in fear, as if they had seen the grim reaper reaping all lives. "We shall bring an equal end and death to all living beings," the chanting continued. On the head of the skeleton king that was laughing eerily, the mage who was standing on the crown of ice continued chanting. The crown made of ice crystals and gemstones became his throne. The cliff was now a field of snow. On top of the frost, the king of ice was laughing wantonly. Just as existence was enough to bring an end to all living beings. Beneath the cliff, endless ice started to freeze the flood before them. Even the air started to freeze. When the king of eternal night descended, all living beings would welcome their end. Even though the ice had yet to reach the nine-headed dragon, fear finally appeared in the blood-red eyes of the gigantic dragon. Under the gaze of the skeleton king, Nine-Headed Dragon Emperor Furos had never been so close to death before. Even though his rainbow-colored dragon breath was still gathering, the instinctive fear of a living being on the brink of death caused the immortal ancient beast to tremble. This wasn't determined by strength. It was an instinctive fear caused by the food chain. The black skeleton king in front of him was the predator of all living beings. The nine-headed dragon also knew that the skeleton king in front of him, who was taller than him, wasn't real. It was just a projection of a soul world brought about by the release of a forbidden spell. Although this was the privilege of a powerful being who was once close to the level of a true god and might be rare in this era, it wasn't much to an ancient being like him. However, the key point was that the might of a god's projection was the true appearance of that person, that god. He had seen Lady Storm's god's projection before. The furious true god's projection that created a storm and destroyed a city couldn't even compare to the might of this black skeleton king. The only one that could compare was the ancient death god Ael's projection that he had seen by chance. Ael, the god of the dead, also in the form of a skeleton and wielding a black god equipment scepter. Could he really be that legendary person? I heard that he recently appeared in the underground world and even killed a demon count. Could this be the legendary, super forbidden spell that directly destroyed the kingdom of the elves, Ice Aeon? Under our will, the Ice Aeon shall once again return to the mortal world, and the world that belongs to the dead shall once again. At this stage, the forbidden spell wasn't something that could be stopped at will. Even if the spellcaster stopped chanting, the snow elves in midair would continue chanting. At this moment, under the rising and falling chorus, the strange incantation reverberated throughout the entire battlefield. Even if one didn't understand this foreign language, everyone could understand the true meaning of this strange language. That wasn't some malicious curse. On the contrary, it was just like a historian narrating a new epic that he had recorded. That was a possibility. The spellcaster was narrating the future that he believed to be inevitable. When the Ice Aeon descends once again, when everything is frozen once again, all living beings and gods will either die or fall into eternal slumber. The dead are not afraid of the frost will become the new masters of the era. Even though it was just a simple description and statement, it carried endless destruction and despair. This was the doomsday hymn of Emperor Yongya, Ice Aeon. This was an unimaginable distortion. However, from the perspective of natural history, it was indeed a possible doomsday that could happen in the future. In order to bring the true doomsday that he hoped for to all living beings, the completely insane Emperor Yongya created the most dangerous and insane forbidden spell in history. The most unimaginable thing was that he actually succeeded. From the day this forbidden spell was born, the Ice Aeon was destined to become the nightmare of all living beings. When he realized that the opponent in front of him could possibly be that person, Fioras felt despair. The name of a person was like the shadow of a tree. Even a second-rate god at his peak would have to take a detour to avoid him. His army had once hunted down countless existences of the same level as him, and he was infamous in the world of top-notch demonic beasts. With such a deep memory of his past, it would be foolish of him to still be unable to recognize the person in front of him. Emperor Yongya, the terrified, nine-headed dragon emperor, screamed out the forbidden name. His roar echoed throughout the entire city. Countless gazes were directed in his direction, and the entire world trembled. At this moment, Fioras didn't doubt that this forbidden spell would claim his life. As long as the complete Ice Aeon was released, the one who should be worried about whether he would be able to preserve his corpse in one piece is the city, not him. That was indeed the case. As long as the complete Ice Aeon was released, the effects of the City of Rain would be negligible. That was because this place would be a polar region with nothing but glaciers for the next 100 years. The seven-color dragon's breath had reached its final moments. The enemy that the Dragon Slayer had pursued for his entire life was about to fall in front of him. However, when he was about to die, it wasn't the time for him to take revenge. Ah, gotcha! The two newly born dragon heads bit off their 6 dragon heads. The pitiful 9-headed dragon emperor turned into a 3-headed snake. After losing its 6 energy sources, the remaining main head was finally able to freely control the ball of dragon's breath that was about to go berserk. Thus, he spat out his dragon's breath with all his might and unhesitatingly pushed the ball of light towards Emperor Yongya. At this moment, the majestic me was actually on the verge of tears. I was just a bronze-rank rookie ice mage. The magic power in my body wasn't even enough to create a blizzard. What I say on, it was just a distant dream. However, just like how I comprehended Bladestorm, it wasn't difficult to comprehend the Ice Aeon that I created. However, without the support of a foundation, I definitely wouldn't be able to release it. Ding! Congratulations for comprehending the semi-god tier destruction, forbidden spell, Ice Aeon. System notification, what? You want more explanations? Anyway, you won't be able to use it no matter what. So why waste my saliva? If you really manage to release it, remember to buy a coffin. Why? Do you think that I should use this rare luck to buy a lottery ticket? Are you dumb? How can a dead person receive a lottery ticket? Right? You can go and bet on a ball. It just so happens that I can earn a sum of money. It is a gamble that isn't difficult at all. As long as I bet on your tails, I will definitely win. As usual, I ignore the chatterbox system that spits more than the main text. At this moment, in order to restrain the 9-headed dragon who didn't care about me at all, I only intended to use Ice Aeon to scare him. Since I have the magic power stored in the Dark God's Breath of Death, I might as well use it to scare him. However, the moment I opened my mouth, I knew that the situation was bad. I had gone overboard. Damn it, I can't stop. Chapter 121. Damn it, I can't stop it. The ice spirits dance and sing around me. The incantation that comes out of my mouth spreads through their singing, resonating with the entire world. It's just like how a skilled knight can ride a war horse to perform all sorts of tricks, while a rookie knight would often be thrown off the horse and dragged along. Right now, I'm that unlucky rookie knight who is being dragged along. Furthermore, the more ferocious a horse is, the harder it is to tame. Once a top-tier forbidden spell starts, it's hard to end. It's just like how a rocket can't stop once it takes off. My past experience and urgent judgment made me careless. The difference between the living and the dead caused the incantation to deviate from the start. When I release a super forbidden spell that exceeds my standard, when I use the black staff as the source of magic, I turn from a knight to a rookie who is being dragged along. Even I myself become a part of the forbidden spell. The elated dancing ice spirits also bless me with ice. Using the forbidden spell once again, my comprehension of the power of ice and snow continues to increase. At this moment, on my interface, the soul imprint of the ice treader is recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. 7%, 14%, 30%. What kind of joke is this? I don't see you guys moving normally. Why are you guys causing trouble at this crucial moment? In order to prevent the forbidden spell from going out of control and turning into a bomb that could explode at any moment, I unhesitatingly put all of my skill points into the ice skill tree. Ice control, bone-chilling chill, and other talents lit up all the way. As long as it's a necessary skill under the Ice Aeon skill tree, I would crazily add points into it. The effect of putting these skills into it was instantaneous. Although I'm still far from Ice Aeon, the mastery of these ice skills gives me some confidence in casting forbidden spells. At the very least, I don't have to worry about accidentally turning myself into a bomb. However, blessings don't come in pairs. At the same time that I solve the problem of self-destruction, a new problem has appeared. In my eyes, the entire world has turned into glaciers and icebergs. Other than ice, there is nothing else in this ice field. All life is sleeping under the snow. This isn't an illusion, but the effect that the forbidden spell is about to achieve. The ice spirits are happily telling one another about the beautiful future that they are dreaming of. However, if the snow elves liked it, the living would definitely not like it. Just as the system said, if I really used a forbidden spell, I would probably be able to save the coffin. Perhaps even my physical body and soul would be frozen here, and my endless reincarnation would finally be able to rest. Irene Bela, knock me out. Hearing my command, the cute frigid moss snow girl transformed into an ice demon in midair. But before she could land, the black skeletal hand grabbed her and hesitated for a moment before tossing her far away. My gods, my projection automatically acted as my defense. If it wasn't for the fact that I instinctively treated Irene as a trustworthy comrade, that gigantic hand probably wouldn't have just flung me away. It would have directly crushed me to death. 82%, 89%, 91%, the restoration of my soul imprint was also nearing its end. The good thing that I should have been happy about in the past was like a talisman that hastened my death. I could feel that when the ice treader was completely restored, it would be the time when Ice Aeon was blasted out, and it would also be the time when I breathed my last. If even my life force was turned into the driving force of the forbidden spell, then it would be unreasonable for me to not die. Just as I was despairingly awaiting the arrival of the final judgment, the nine-headed dragon actually made a heroic sacrifice by biting off 6 of its own dragon heads, forcefully changing the direction of the dragon's breath, so that the lethal breath would be directed towards me. I was immediately overjoyed, and I almost wanted to hug this ugly dragon head and give it a kiss or two. That's right, I was overjoyed, not angry or fearful. The forbidden spell on my side had already reached the stage where it would automatically be cast. Just like how it chased away Irene Bela, it would also instinctively make judgments to eliminate any sudden situations that might hinder the successful casting of the forbidden spell. At this moment, when a similarly threatening, offensive spell was coming at me, if I didn't guess wrongly, there was only one way that it could respond to it. Let us bring about an eternal end to the living. Ice Aeon. As expected, the ice breath was released in advance, colliding fiercely with the ball of dragon's breath in front of me. The clash between the forbidden spells was abnormally strange. The collision of ice and dragon's breath brought about a whirlwind of death. Everything caught in the whirlwind would first freeze and then shatter into pieces. The river here was completely destroyed. Right now, the river became dry, and the river water became ice shards. A blinding white light stole the sight of mortals. By the time I recovered my strength, all that was left in front of me was ruins. I should be thankful that the previous flood had driven away all the residents of the docks. The impact of the forbidden spell before me had completely destroyed the entire docks. Although both were incomplete forbidden spells, I still had the absolute advantage. I was still able to catch my breath on the cliff, but half of Hydra's body had already been frozen solid. Two of its dragon heads had already turned into ice shards amidst their wails. This was the best proof that I was the victor. If it wasn't for the fact that it had used all of its life force to protect its final main head, it was likely that this ancient demon would have died as well. Without going through the final stages of the forbidden spell's compression, purification, fusion, resonance, and many other processes, the current Ice Aeon was incomplete. It was precisely because of its incompleteness that I was able to survive. I collapsed on the ground. All of my physical strength and magic power had been sucked dry. My transformation had already been automatically canceled, but I was unable to get up. However, I knew that we should have already won. In the name of my Lord Womians, I bestow upon you the duty of a just knight. The inheritance ceremony had already ended, and the torturous 4 minutes had come to an end. Roar! Even though only one head remained, Fiora's still roared in anger and unwillingness. He had already noticed that Basra's power was greatly increasing in the distance, and he could faintly guess what was about to happen. Hydra, who only had one dragon head left, discovered that it was the end of the world. However, a scene that left everyone speechless happened. While his power and power level rose rapidly, the body of Valkyrie, mentioned in Lung Tu's chapter, which was only at the level of a semi-god, actually started to disintegrate. Specks of golden light circled around him. Calmly looking at his disintegrating physical body, Basra knew that it was time for him to return. Since he had accepted the law job, he didn't know what he would encounter when he returned. Although it is a pity that I won't be able to witness the end of this little snake, to be able to comprehend to such a level, even if it was only for an instant, is worth it. His legs had already disintegrated into golden light, but Valkyrie still calmly took out his sword and spear. After hesitating for a moment, he tossed the spear to the young female knight who had been looking at him with reverence. Keep it as a record. His name is Dragon Slayer. I admire your courage in charging an evil dragon. You should be able to use him one day. Then, Basra took a look at the scenery of the mortal world and threw his sword towards the sky. This time, the golden sword didn't suddenly change shape or flash with lightning. Even the tail of the sword began to dissipate in the golden light. However, in the eyes of everyone, the sword couldn't be resisted at all. It was fated to be the end of the dragon. Basra, who threw the sword, didn't even aim. He knew that the sword would eventually land on the dragon's body. At that moment, he came into contact with the realm of true gods and infused the special divine power known as Dragon's Death into the sword. That was the divine power that he had just mastered. As the price for mastering the forbidden power, he returned to the realm of gods after the golden light dissipated. Just as the vanished Valkyrie Longtu said, not being able to witness the end of the nine-headed dragon was his only regret. However, in his heart, when this attack that reached the realm of gods was thrown out, Fiora's was already destined to perish. At this moment, Hydra, who was born as a ferocious beast, didn't have the resolve to accept the end of the world. Even at the brink of death, he continued to struggle, resisting against the fate of certain death. The premature disappearance of great judgment allowed him to regain his freedom. However, the frozen half of his body restricted his mobility. He wanted to bite off his main head to escape alone, but it was a pity that he didn't have the strength or the dragon head to do so. It's over. Finally, the despairing Hydra actually shed a huge tear ball. He knew that he was nearing the end. It's over. We finally won. We survived. This was the joy of me and the others. But suddenly, something inexplicable happened. A red figure fiercely collided with a long sword in the air. Oh, I curse you. Darn celestial tower. Darn Lamosai. I will make sure that you accompany me in hell. Without a doubt, the red figure who sacrificed himself to save the nine-headed dragon is the fallen Marsalit. However, he isn't a good person who sacrificed himself for the sake of others. He was thrown down by someone to block the spear. The knight who was guarding Marsalit had already fallen into the water, unconscious. Under the guidance of the remaining god power, the weakened Dragonslayer sword still pierced into Hydra's body. However, the effects of a semi-god as a shield is miraculously good. Even though the gigantic body of the nine-headed dragon was reduced to ashes, the remaining half of the main dragon head started to regenerate. Yaya, fool, fool. The malicious-filled cry of the crow reverberates in the air. Then, after a distortion, it morphs into a familiar silhouette. The local guild leader of the Celestial Tower, Lamos I. Having colluded with the Sea Folk, he had viewed the Sea Folk's attack as a golden opportunity for revenge. Thus, he stared fixedly at the church, waiting for an opening. At this moment, he had been patiently waiting for an opportunity. Indeed, by making a move at the crucial moment, he was able to turn the situation around. Seeing that his vengeance was about to be avenged, Lamos I smiles widely. Behind him, the nine-headed dragon started to regenerate once again. Without the dragon sealing chains sealing it, even if there's only one dragon head, as long as he is given sufficient time and water, he would be able to return to his full form. Unless we completely destroy the main dragon head before the second dragon head regenerates. Otherwise, we will end up as his food. At this point in the battle, we were actually taken advantage of by someone else. This really leaves us in despair. Yet, in this desperate situation, Renee, who has been fighting against the fear of death, stands up. Without saying a word, she jumps on Shiva's transformed heavy boar, raises the dragon slaying that she just obtained and charges towards the undefeatable dragon. I didn't think that I would have to use this spear so soon. Everyone, it's not the time to despair yet. As long as we never give up, there is still hope. Frigid Mock transforms into the standard equipment of his former country's cavalry. The mist war flag at his back unfurls in the wind. That unyielding wall of defense in the howling wind is as sturdy as ever. The figure of the Mist King leading the charge is just like the past. The white-armored knight charges on the icy surface. The silver spear that he raises carries the determination to slay the giant dragon. The kingdom-protecting holy sword is surrounded by silver flames. Just like her ancestors, the silver-ranked knight princess is once again challenging the hopeless situation. Even if I am fated to die, rather than cowering on my sickbed like a coward, I would rather die valiantly on the path of charging. At this moment, the Night Princess finally understands the seemingly stubborn maxim recorded in her family's records. Perhaps her ancestors also smiled as they charged towards their deaths. Even with the might of the dragon, even with the difference in strength, she knows that she will probably die here, but as long as this moment of honor exists, she will never regret it. Hopeless situation? That is indeed the case. At this moment, the regeneration of Hydra's body is about to come to an end. When he stands up once more, it will be the end of all life on land. Interesting. You never know what giving up is. This is indeed the rotten temper of the Mist bloodline that has been passed down from generation to generation. Renee, if you survive this, I will admit that you are the true Mist King. At this moment, I can't let the younger generation look down on me. Thus, using my sword as a crutch, I stand up once more. Irene, who has returned, turns into a pair of wings that follow me as I charge forward. What is that? I will lead the charge. I'm the only one on my side. Following Princess Renee are the royal knights of the Mist Kingdom. They know that they are nothing in front of the nine-headed dragon who is about to recover to his peak. However, isn't this desperate yet heroic charge the glorious death that every knight desires? No wonder Lord always says that the knights are a bunch of fools. They really are a bunch of adorable fools. Then we, the Law faction, can't let others look down on us. Behind the knights, Kolos, who is exhausted from casting spells continuously, rides on the storm lightning. The two flower protectors, Deer and Moose, didn't fall behind. They continue to protect her from the left and back. That, Lord Kolos, at the end, there are some words that I've been holding in my heart for a long time. If I don't say them now, I won't have the chance to. Then continue holding them in. Cough, Lord Bishop. Actually, I have something to say as well. Let us forget about those living treasures who were still trying to push each other back at the very end. At the very least, they fulfilled the oath that they promised their comrades to protect them. They really risked their lives to protect the most beautiful flower in their hearts. It is a pity that from the shocked expression on the flower's face, she really doesn't know about it. Then, it is a good thing that she can't speak her mind. Shaking my head, in the back of my mind, I am thinking of the final plan that I can come up with to stop my opponent. Suddenly, a voice rings beside my ear. Reporting to Queen, the preparations for Plan C are complete. Do you want to activate it? Then what else is there to say? What else is there to play in this world? Hurry up and do it. I am waiting for you to save me. What else is there to ask? Hurry up and activate it. Save me? Then my snacks this year. I will take care of all your snacks for the next year. I will agree to any conditions. All right, as expected, there is motivation when there is temptation. The next moment, I hear the sound that I have been waiting for. Dang, dang, dang. Kacha, kacha. That is the sound of the mechanical chains and the door being opened. In the next second, the wall suddenly opens up, revealing the hidden base. The battleship that has been prepared is already floating in the air, ready to attack. When the cannons start firing, he has already begun his assault. The so-called Plan C is actually very simple. It is just to let Heloise enter the base underwater with the key, then at the crucial moment, open the exit on the surface to launch a pincer attack. Without a doubt, this is the most crucial moment. Next, under the encirclement of the three sides, it will be a battle of numbers against the few. In the base, the only remaining mage tower shoots out a dazzling fireball. In the first exchange, it shoots down the dumbfounded AMU's eye. Following that, the mage tower shoots out a series of fireballs, and the defensive cannons of the base start firing fatal lead bullets. The high-speed Vulture assault battleship has already begun its pursuit of the evil dragon. Shoot the dragon's head. That is its only weakness. My reminder is not in vain. In the next moment, with the coarse voice of the dwarves, the main cannon of the battleship completes its adjustment. Huh, I found prey. After that familiar catchphrase, the main cannon of the battleship fires a perfect parabola after charging. Following that, the last dragon head of the defenseless, nine-headed dragon explodes. Just like in the legends, as long as all the dragon heads are destroyed at the same time, it represents the true destruction of the nine-headed dragon. The body that had just regenerated turns to ashes once again, allowing me to relax completely. We won. We finally won. Chapter 122. In the past, the police always arrived late. In the operas and novels of this world, the Public Security Night Regiment was the same. In those legendary heroes and epics, the companions of justice would always arrive after the battle. It made people wonder if they had been hiding in a corner since the beginning, only coming out to hug the thigh of the victor when the battle was won, or if they were simply waiting for this moment to jump out and snatch the spoils of war. At this time, the merfolk army, who also arrived late, met with some trouble. Spectators needed to be cautious. In a battle between semi-gods, anyone who touched them would die. These two semi-gods were no ordinary semi-gods. After a few sea giants who tried to help were slashed to death by sword winds or accidentally blasted to death by dragon breath, no one was foolish enough to try and help them. At this time, the collision of the forbidden spells was earth-shattering. The voice of Emperor Yongye resounded in the whole city. Hydra, who was like a mountain, fell to the ground. The shadow of the black skeleton king, the sky full of ice and snow, and the light of the dragon breath. If they could not see or hear it, they could really be blind and deaf. The fall of the Hydra caused all of the sea folk to be shocked and fearful. Strictly speaking, this big shot wasn't a member of the sea folk. He should be considered a deep sea monster, the beloved pet of the Queen of the Storms. He was only following the will of the goddess to help. His accidental involvement in the battle and his accidental death was definitely beyond the goddess' expectation. It would definitely lead to a chain reaction. First of all, Lady Storm did not know how to calm her anger. This ambitious goddess of storm was not famous on land, but she was famous in the sea and among the fishermen. She was known for being unreasonable, hot-tempered, temperamental, and holding grudges. Lady Storm had been eyeing the goddess of vengeance for a long time. Her holding grudges was more troublesome than anything else. If it wasn't for the fact that she had destroyed one of her clones and was seriously injured, she might have sent another clone down to take revenge. To the sea folk, who were destined to be the target of their wrath, capturing the culprit as a blood sacrifice was obviously a rather reliable idea. However, it was a pity that due to the collision of the forbidden spells, the river had stopped flowing and the surrounding floodwaters had even turned into a layer of ice. This made the sea folk, who couldn't live without water, suffer greatly. After all, they were from the merfolk, not the snow race. Those who were close to the ice were frozen in the water, and those who were further away couldn't stand it after a few minutes. Due to the Ottoman Empire's summer weather conditions, this time, the sea folk mainly came from the warm sea regions. Being cold-blooded and wearing thin clothing, they were actually extremely sensitive to the temperature. On the other hand, the water elementals passed through the frozen river without any hindrance. However, the moment they came into contact with the core region, they were actually frozen into ice by the low temperature. And this was only because the forbidden spell's completion rate was extremely low. If the complete ice aeon were to appear in the world, not only would Rain City be wiped out, but it would also be recorded in history. After all, the previous ice aeons had always represented the fall of a certain city or the destruction of a certain kingdom. They were all important historical events. Even if it was only at this level, it was already quite a headache for me. After all, after the appearance of this signature forbidden spell, it wouldn't take long before the news of Emperor Yongye's reappearance would spread throughout the world. The only one who could deny it would probably be Yongye's successor, and not Yongye himself. However, Hydra's voice would also bring about new problems. Of course, it was also fortunate that it wasn't the complete Ice River forbidden spell. Otherwise, if I didn't freeze myself, I would have to bathe in the river Styx. You have killed semi-god, nine-headed dragon emperor Fioris. Host contribution in this battle is 89%, exceeding the 80% benchmark. Furthermore, there is a huge difference in strength between both sides. You have met the requirements for a perfect kill. You have obtained 16489 fate points, unrated 9-headed dragon heart X1, legendary ranked 9-colored teardrop X1, legendary ranked material Hydra perfect dragon scale X4, epic ranked material Hydra superior dragon scale X32, epic ranked material Hydra tenon X7. You have successfully killed a semi-god, 9-headed dragon emperor. Congratulations for obtaining the honorary title Dragonslayer. Upon equipping it, your damage against dragon descendants will be increased by 10%. The effects of dragons' talents on you will be reduced by 20%. Dragon's attention towards you will be increased by 200%. This title can be leveled up. System notice. In order to level it up, the weakest dragon must be a legendary ranked dragon. You should look for an immemorial dragon. There will be a bonus reward. I ignored the malicious notification of the system. An immemorial dragon can easily crush an immemorial dragon like Molly. Even when I was at my peak, I didn't want to provoke them. Although this is a rare buff title, the difficulty of leveling it up is a little high. At this moment, looking at the rewards that I have obtained from the system, I am rather satisfied. As expected of a 1,000-year-old ghost who has lived for who knows how many years, Hydra is really something. As for the 89% contribution, I was stunned for a moment when I saw it. But thinking about it carefully, it isn't wrong. If it wasn't for my help, it would have been impossible for us to win this Hunt of the Dragons. Before the clash of forbidden spells, Hydra, who is skilled in regeneration and self-healing, was still in his perfect state. If it wasn't for my Ice Aeon, Hydra wouldn't have been able to bite off 6 of his heads. The clash of forbidden spells heavily injured him and tore off 2 of his remaining heads. That was why there was a chance that Hydra, who only had 1 head left, could be killed. Furthermore, the negative effect of freezing all water sources was much more effective than the dragon sealing chains. It directly sealed the Hydra's regenerative ability, forcing it to use its remaining life force to forcefully regenerate its body. That was how the dwarf managed to steal the Hydra's head in the end. The risk is great, but the reward is also great. Looking at the 0 skill points on my interface and the messy ice skill tree, I wanted to cry, but no tears came out. But at this moment, this kind of reward is more than enough to make up for my losses. Although the system has always been a scam, it still follows the basic rule of paying a great reward. It is impossible for an unequipped sea monster to drop equipment. Thus, the system compensates me with a large sum of skill points and precious materials. With this amount of skill points, it is enough for me to push myself up to LV 30, upper bronze rank. Even after Renee's discount, it seems like it is enough for her to reach gold rank. Perhaps she might even be able to reach gold rank. After a slight calculation, I realize that I have been scammed once again. The difficulty of Renee's growth is probably only a few tenths of mine. By the time I reach gold rank, it should be enough for her to reach epic rank. System notice, a 9-headed dragon's regeneration talent is already giving you such a hard time. And this isn't even its strongest environment, the ocean. Furthermore, you're in a state of exhaustion after being beaten up by Lone 2 for more than an hour. Are you sure that you intend to challenge those undying in your human form? If you're sure, you are allowed to change your physical body. The system will offer a great discount. 2,000 skill points is enough. Of course I am not changing. How foolish would I be to give up this double diamond bloodline physical body that came with great difficulty and use that ungraded human physical body that can easily be capped? No, I am determined not to change. It doesn't matter if my growth is slow, as long as I'm strong enough in the end. Warning, Lady Storm has already remembered you. If there is no absolute need, please do not get close to the sea, and even more so, do not enter the sea. Of course, if you insist, you can try killing other sea monsters and true god clones. As long as you are at sea, I guarantee that the rewards will be much better than this. Lady Storm's grudge is completely within my expectations. Honestly speaking, based on my understanding of her, it is already a little strange that she didn't send her clone down. As for challenging giant sea monsters and the god of storms at sea, I am not that suicidal. Warning. The appearance of Emperor Yongya has attracted the attention of the elven gods. Please do not attract any more attention, and do not enter the church of the elven gods. Otherwise, you understand. To those vengeful long ears, the destruction of the kingdom of the elves is just yesterday. I don't know if you often feel a chill down your spine, as though you have been maliciously cursed. In reality, your name has already been engraved on cursed grass puppets, and they are selling really well. Warning. The God of Holy Light has issued an oracle, requesting his believers to search for the existence of the undead emperor. Once it is verified, God envoys and Valkyrie will descend to the mortal world to hunt you down. Due to the approaching holy war, the God of Holy Light has increased his vigilance. Obviously, this divine power machine is still operating well. However, I believe that you will not consider challenging the Valkyrie Holy Knight. Don't think that Lone 2 is already the pinnacle of Valkyrie. There are countless heroes in the long history of Valkyrie, and many of them are feared by the true gods. Warning. The war god that the beastmen worship is warning. The sisters of joy and laughter, or should I say that I have indeed been glorious before? Just as the shadow of this person's name was revealed, a large number of powerful figures' attention flooded the system interface, scaring me. Damn it, the holy war has just begun, and they're all paying attention to me? This is going to be troublesome. News. The goddess of moonlight has expressed her goodwill towards you, and has handed over Basra to the Valkyrie palace of the god of law. Due to your hard work, the true god Womians has obtained the first Valkyrie. Womians should be rewarding you in the near future, so please continue to work hard to poach him. The god of law Womians had already become a divine power server. Going by normal logic, he should be rewarding believers of law who have contributed greatly. His actions were easy to understand, but after losing a Valkyrie, not only was the goddess of moonlight not angry, she even expressed her goodwill through the Valkyrie Basra, which was hard to understand. However, it was a pity that this wasn't the time to think about it carefully. After all, this wasn't a complete forbidden spell. Soon, this place would thaw, and when the Seafolk army arrived, I would have to consider what to write on my tombstone. Taking advantage of the current obscurity, it was best to hide in the base as soon as possible. The remaining Vulture battleship had already landed, and the others quickly boarded the ship. However, Renee seemed to have other plans. She rode on her mount and galloped into the distance. Looking at her destination, it was the broken dragon head. What happened to that lass? Helpless, I could only follow her to take a look. However, the moment I got close, I saw a frightening scene. Renee ran to the wound on the dragon head and was about to touch the flowing dragon blood. Silly lass, you can't touch that. Are you courting death? Rain was shocked by my roar, but she felt a little wronged. But didn't the night novels say that bathing in dragon blood would make one invulnerable? Furthermore, it would give one immense strength. Could it be that even books can lie? I was a little speechless and immediately dispelled the idea of helping her advance to gold rank. Even though her performance just now wasn't bad, she was still a naughty brat who lacked common sense. The stronger the naughty brat, the greater the trouble she would cause. It was better for her to rest first. Don't even think about it. Have those novels ever seen a real dragon? This is poisonous blood. It can even corrode rocks. Do you think that you are tougher than rocks? But that person clearly survived. He's still absorbing the dragon blood. That person, following Renee's finger, a half-dead person laid in the poisonous blood. It was a terrible sight to behold, but judging from his breathing, he was still alive. Marcelet? Yes, it was the blood mage Emperor Marcelet who was used as a shield. Lone-Two's attack had reached the pinnacle of the concept of Dragon Slayer, and it didn't pose any additional threat to anyone other than a dragon. Marcelet, who had a large hole in his chest, didn't die on the spot. On the brink of death from excessive blood loss, a semi-god could only instinctively suck blood to survive. However, at this moment, the only blood left was Hydra's poisonous blood. The current Marcelet didn't even seem human anymore. The left side of his body had been corroded into disgusting chunks of flesh by the poisonous blood, while the right side of his body was frozen in ice. If it wasn't for the fact that the right side of his body had been frozen to protect some of his organs, he would likely have died long ago. But even so, his face was one yin and one yang, making it impossible to look at. If I left him here, he would die sooner or later. However, his entire body was covered in poisonous blood. Even the best priest in the entire Ottoman Empire would likely still die. I hesitated for a moment before coming to a decision. Take him away. I'm afraid that I'm the only one in the entire world who can save him. Several minutes later, the vulture flew into the base amidst the wind and rain. When the seafolk arrived, only Hydra's gigantic corpse remained. Arledent was a small, permanently neutral country in the southwest of Ike. There were only 10 or so cities in the entire country, but most of the population was concentrated in the capital, Arlo. However, nobody would think of Arledent as a small country. Arledent was known as the Mage Country, the country of magic, and a mega empire without city walls. This was a widely recognized fact in Ike. Arledent was a mage's paradise. Not only were elemental mages, arcane mages, truth mages, warlocks, and evil mages commonly seen in Ike, Arledent also had its own private research institute for undead magic and blood magic, which were the common enemies of Ike. As long as one didn't go too overboard, the government of Arledent would turn a blind eye. 1% of Arledent's population were mages or other spellcasting job classes. Even though 90% of them were rookies who couldn't even reach the standard of an acolyte, compared to other countries, Arledent had more than 100 times the success rate of mages. Arledent was the holy land in the hearts of all mages. By the way, it should be mentioned that in his second life, Roland had also trained here. He had even gone to school here and met Heloise here. It wasn't that Arledent didn't have nobles in this country. However, nobles didn't have any special privileges. True authority was in the hands of the mages. The academic atmosphere in Arledent was very strong. Countless spellcasting job classes learned and grew here. There were countless different kinds of magic organizations, and only the wisest and strongest mages were allowed to have their own laboratory in the floating city, the Cloud Tower. The 18 strongest magic organizations in the Cloud Tower were the true authority of this country. Their respective leaders formed a parliament called the Truth Symposium. Although this name wasn't very serious, in Arledent, Even a child knew that the members of this symposium were the true rulers of this country. At this moment, in an inn in the Cloud City, a seemingly young couple was complaining to each other. The woman in the couple was the hottest rising star in Arlington in the recent few months. Last time, it was Battle Mage Hilton from the Sword of Order. This time, it's an Archmage ranked in the top 10 of the Red Sea Council. This should be the 6th this month, right? Adam, are you intending to beat up all of the Archmages in the Cloud Tower? Marguerite, this time, it was really an accident. That idiot actually dared to say that the underground world was just a bunch of barbarians in front of me. So, I decided to let him know the wrath of barbarians. Wait a moment, it's him? I'm talking about Archmage Amelia. She's a female. Oh, I remember now. Yesterday, because I drank too much, I accidentally kicked a single-horned semi-dragon. That little bastard actually dared to bite me. In the end, after I beat it up, I realized that it was someone else's magic pet, so I fought with its master. The expressionless Marguerite adjusted her spectacles, and a cold glint flashed across her eyes. This was her habitual action when she was truly angry, and it was usually a sign that someone was going to be unlucky. Adam, who had caused trouble, immediately took a step back in fright. In the entire Arlington, there is only one person who has a single-horned scorpion dragon as a magic pet, and that is Archmage Fendi from the Blue Tower. His master is my friend. Adam, tell me honestly, just how many fights did you get into this month? After being questioned by Marguerite, Adam lowered his head in silence, as if he was an embarrassed primary school student who had made a mistake and was being scolded. However, Marguerite shook her head. Silence won't solve the problem. Just tell me, the problem has to be solved. My seniority is still considered high, so they will give me face. You actually know how to be embarrassed? It seems that you've really improved. Wait, I'm almost done counting. 2 nights ago in the bar, 47. 2 days ago in the afternoon in the dining room, 48. So, it wasn't that he was embarrassed. Instead, he was lowering his head and counting the number of fights he had with his fingers. Marguerite had once again underestimated how thick Adam's skin was. Even though she had been tormented by Adam and Roland's unreliability over the years to the point of numbness, Marguerite, who had always handled things calmly, was now infuriated to the point of choking. Adam Hahn, it's only been 7 days this month, and you've already fought almost 50 fights. Do you really intend to beat up all the Archmages? These are all my former classmates and juniors. How do you expect me to conduct myself? Aren't you going to be promoted to the position of Truth Overseer? Everyone on the streets is talking about it. That's the highest authority in the world, and I'm still intending to take advantage of you. The man of the great Truth Overseer. How impressive is that? Truth Overseer was an unofficial title for the members of the Truth Symposium. Becoming a member also meant becoming one of the people with the highest authority in Arlington. But at this moment, this great saint who was about to wield the highest authority had a face of helplessness. She could only stare at the man who claimed to be dependent on her, not knowing where to start getting angry. I rejected. Why did you reject? It's such a pity I can't even freeload anymore. Even though his words were filled with regret, the corners of Adam's mouth were curled up in a natural smile. From the very start, he knew what choice Marguerite would make. Isn't it all because of you bastards? Although Roland is unreliable, as long as he speaks seriously, we still have to treat him carefully. Since so many things will happen in the future, what's the point of staying here peacefully? Besides, I've already said what I need to say to my old friend. As for those tacky troubles, I'm already sick of them. Throwing away the highest authority in a country was like throwing away a problem. But to Marguerite, authority was really just an obstacle and a burden. She spent most of her day busy with political affairs. What was the difference between the glorious Truth Overseer and a busy official? 3 hours ago, the latest news from East H came. It is said that traces of Emperor Yongya and the forbidden spell Ice Aeon have been discovered. They hope to send experts to verify it. A few of the current Truth Overseers placed great importance on this matter and intend to send their trusted aides to search for it. It hasn't even been half a year, and Roland is already causing trouble. That sure is fast. Then, does it count as my win? Marguerite nodded her head helplessly. Who would have thought that she would be exposed so quickly? Before walking on the ground, Marguerite had indeed made a bet with Adam. They were betting on whether Roland could last for a year without causing any trouble. Obviously, Adam, who understood Roland better, won. You've prepared your luggage? Where did you get the news from? 2 days ago, I received a letter from that fellow. It was a bunch of nonsense. He only said that he was doing well recently, that he was favored by women, and that he had many beautiful girlfriends. But since that fellow was only spouting nonsense, even his bragging didn't feel real. It was obvious that he had met with trouble recently and needed help. It was rare to see that fellow lowering his head. I was happy these few days, so I celebrated a little. Your celebration is to get someone to beat you up? Forget it, it's all my fault. Bringing you here was a mistake in the first place. I've said what I wanted to say, and it's time to leave. It just so happens that the one leading the team to East HE this time is the Archmage Amelia. Yeah, the one you beat up previously. Let's hitch a ride then. Can we change the topic? That woman is a little scary. You really remembered it long ago, but you kept acting dumb. What did you do? Why did you make the usually kind Amelia so angry? I laughed at her pet for being too weak. It can't be compared to Roland's. In the end, she actually said that she wanted to use me as a material to create a new creation. So, I beat her up. If she was just mocking you, she shouldn't have hit you. Even though she is a former Truth Overseer, she is famous for her good temper. As for using you as a material for her experiments, no matter how I think about it, it doesn't seem like something she would say. The mockery was after I used those little fellows as a test subject. I didn't expect those fellows to be so weak that they fell apart. They are far worse than those fellows in the undead district. In other words, you destroyed Amelia's experimental creations? It's no wonder she was so angry. But even if it was for my sake, she wouldn't have said such vicious words. Although the direction of her research is hard for normal people to accept, she is still in third place in the most desirable girlfriend mage poll. Furthermore, she was already a mentor when I was still studying. Back then, she was famous for her good character. No matter how I look at it, it doesn't seem like she would say such crazy words. After pondering for a moment, Adam finally revealed an expression of realization. Back then, when I mentioned that Roland's creations are stronger than hers, she suddenly became agitated and started scolding me. She even screamed at me, "Roland? You mean that idiot who couldn't even learn Blizzard after spending 2 years? That thief who stole all of my research materials? That scammer bastard who I cursed 10,000 times every day? That Roland? Could it be someone with the same name? I don't think that other than that Roland, there is anyone else who could turn a gentle lady who was smiling just a moment ago into a hysterical, crazy woman with just a name. Furthermore, I had already checked the graduation portrait of the rank and confirmed it. It is that Roland. Why didn't you say so earlier? That way, it would be hard to reject her. Aren't you just creating trouble for Roland? As a former Truth Overseer, Amelia isn't easy to deal with. Isn't it easy to reject her? You could just slip away. Seeing how happy you are, you must be waiting to see a joke. Aren't you smiling as well? Are you going to make Roland happy again? The two of them chatted as they walked. The setting sun dragged their shadows far away. In an alley by the side, a cloaked woman was leaning against the wall, staring at them. As expected, you know the whereabouts of Roland. I won't let you go. This time, I will definitely be able to exact my revenge. Damned Roland, damned Roland, damned Roland. The stalker woman bit on her finger as she cursed crazily. Her finger had already been bitten off and blood was dripping down without her even noticing. The way she cursed crazily didn't have the slightest hint of an idol. Even the most vicious and dangerous which wouldn't act so crazily. Lady Amelia? Amelia was stunned for a moment. Then, she turned around, only to see the gentle and kind face of a teacher. Good evening, students. Are you out for a stroll as well? From a certain perspective, changing her face was also a kind of ultimate skill. When the male students who had received her autograph left happily, she turned around and her crazy witch mode came online once more. Damned Roland, damned Roland, damned Roland. Chapter 123. Even in the sealed base, it is still as bright as day. The lighting equipment is fully activated and the radiance of the mage tower illuminates the surroundings. But at this moment, on a flat ground, something that doesn't fit the current era is happening. Handball in the penalty area. Referee, this is a penalty. It is definitely a penalty. Damn it, ignoring me. Did you take bribes again? Deer is filled with resentment. If such an obvious handball in the penalty area isn't awarded, how can a ball be played? To actually dare to roar at the referee. Red handkerchief, unable to find a substitute for a red card. The gleeful Ingo takes out an old handkerchief painted red from his pocket and waves it at Deer. Friendship comes first, victory comes second. What a despicable player, but what a fair referee this is. Praise you, fair gnome referee. Beifong says calmly. But if he isn't the one who committed the handball offense, his words might be more convincing. Deer flies into a rage. He takes out his staff and is about to start a fight, but he is held back by his teammates. It is normal for a gnome to take bribes, but it would be abnormal if he doesn't. If he takes bribes, we won't have to worry about being extorted. Besides, you should know how black-hearted that Ingo fellow is. Since he took bribes, he is already shameless. If you argue with him, he might just make use of this opportunity to send more of our teammates off the field. If that happens, we will really lose everything. Didn't you say that we were going to give money as well? Why is he even more black-hearted today? That we gave 2,000 gold coins while the country of gentlemen football team, abbreviated as the national football team, gave 6,000 gold coins. How do you think the greedy gnome will award us? Then why did Lord allow that gnome to be the referee? Isn't it better to get a fair one? I asked Lord as well. Lord Roland said that the gnomes have short legs and both teams don't want them, so they can't play football. It's fine if you don't want them to be referees as long as they are players. Are you willing to accept a player whose ball is higher than their knees? Actually, they can try being the goalkeeper. Oh, forget it. It would be a joke. Hee indeed. That's even more ridiculous. You can't even touch the ball when you jump. In any case, it's just entertainment. Even if they lose, they would just have to help out with the household chores. The two of them are amused by their own words, but they don't pursue the matter any further. On the other hand, the faces of Ingo, Kabbalah, and the other goblins turn uglier and angrier as they listen to the story. Insulting the referee. Red handkerchief, you are to be punished. Red handkerchief, my ass, we're off stage. Is there any penalty for chatting in football? Yep, you didn't see wrongly. This is a soccer match between the Law and Donlon Principality United, Team France, and the Liberty Gentlemen Country Soccer Team, Team France. You didn't see wrongly either. I came up with this nickname, and I just wanted to use this opportunity to vent the resentment that has been building up in my heart for many years. It has already been a month since we were trapped in the base. Even though we have sufficient food and water, the long period of indoor confinement makes them, who are used to freedom, feel uncomfortable. Their morale and mental state are extremely low. At this moment, it is time for sports to vent their excess energy. Thus, I invented soccer, basketball, badminton, and other ball games. However, it is a pity that the only one that is accepted by the masses is soccer, which has the highest difficulty. After all, basketball relies too much on talent. Furthermore, the differences between the various races are too great, making it impossible for them to play together. For example, basketball is bound to have collisions. Due to the superiority of the powerful melee races, the giants have to lower their heads and dunk. The goblins and dwarves can't even see the basket when they raise their heads. Soccer is accepted by the masses, just that everyone isn't used to using their feet to kick the ball. Thus, they are still on the same level. But even so, messy situations kept happening. The heck, Bayphone, you're addicted to playing. Can't you just use your feet to kick the ball obediently? The seemingly honest man said with a smile. But the rules allow other parts of the body other than the hands to kick the ball. The tail is completely in line with the rules. Why don't you use your tail as well? Bayphone smiles foolishly, his face filled with astonishment. He seems to be wondering why the other party doesn't use his tail. I am a human. Why would I have an X tail? You #% %yen %. How many unlucky fellows have been angered to the point of being scolded by the captain of the national soccer team, Bayphone. Her alt? Alright, it is basically the same rhythm. Obviously, copying the rules of the human soccer matches isn't suitable for the other races. There are all sorts of bugs in the game. But should I say that the name National Soccer Team is used well? The national soccer team, led by Bayphone, is basically an expert at finding bugs and loopholes. They have all sorts of tricks up their sleeves, acting shamelessly both on and off the field. The two teams have fought for more than 30 matches, and the French team has only won 5 matches. The rest of the matches have all been won by the national soccer team. Of course, the bugs that appear in this match will be fixed before the match ends. However, from a certain standpoint, it is forcing the French team, who have too few people, to continuously find loopholes in the rules. Insulting your opponent, red handkerchief. The goblin who has collected enough money is indeed very responsible. He immediately grabs the opportunity to send his opponent off the field. Alright, at the very least, he is the third unlucky fellow to be sent off the field today. The situation has become 11 against 19. What? The number of people isn't right. At the start, it was still 11 against 11. However, this group of gentlemen is too ferocious. Without twice the number of people, it is impossible to fight them. Even so, under all sorts of dirty tricks, the French team only managed to win a few matches, while the national soccer team continues to win. What? Am I fantasizing about it? After so many years, every time I watch the national soccer match, it feels like I am suffering. Since I am in another world, can't I just fantasize about it for a few days? Sigh. The national soccer team will only be able to enter the World Cup once again. I don't expect to win. Let's just be happy with a draw. You want to win? In your next life. Just as I'm fantasizing about it, the rough voice of the dwarf Lamans forces me back to the cruel reality. Thus, I start to take revenge without hesitation. Snow breath, ice wall. The ice sword stabs into the ground. An ice wall appears in front of Lamans, who is dribbling the ball. Then, he crashes into the wall with a bang. The dragon skin ball smashes into his face, and he falls heavily to the ground. The rules that I set do prohibit direct attacks and hindering the opponent, but it doesn't prohibit the creation of a wall on the ground. Furthermore, the opponent that I am dealing with isn't my opponent at all. Bastard Roland, we're on the same side. Why did you screw me over? Perhaps it is because of this dwarf's ridiculously sturdy body that allows Lamans to overcome the disadvantage of being a short-legged race and become a member of the team. What he shouted is the most frustrating thing to me. I clearly wanted to join the human side, but why do they say that I must join the gentleman's side? Furthermore, in order to restrict my movements and prevent me from using dirty tricks, they force me to be a goalkeeper that can't be moved easily. Could it be that before I am a human, I am a gentleman? That it wasn't me. Look at the opposing team's Renee. She is also an Aurora Knight, so it must be them. What nonsense are you spouting? How could that last Renee be as sinister as you? You even had to create a 3-section wall, customizing the shape of the stairs according to the height. First, you hit my knees, then my stomach, and finally my head. This old man's waist, it hurts so much Just as the national team's teammates are arguing, the ball that fell to the ground is picked up by the striker, Cassio. In an instant, the faces of the opposing French team tenses up. Recently, the rules have been constantly changing and all sorts of supernatural and racial talents have been restricted. However, there is one thing that cannot be restricted, and that is the 4-legged Cassio. The centaur, who moves like the wind, is a true ranger and ace marksman. In order to restrict him, the French team sent out the Knight Regiment once again, forcefully changing the football into a polo. However, it is obvious that this kind of legal strategy is too unfair to others. Thus, after a victory, the mounted strategy was tragically changed. However, it is a pity that it is impossible to achieve an absolute balance. Regardless of whether Cassio can run faster than a warhorse, it is impossible for us to request the centaur to walk on 2 hind legs. At this moment, Cassio is displaying his prowess as a ball king. With just a few feint from his side, he is able to shake off the opponent's defenders with his high-speed movements. He is about to enter the shooting range and score a goal easily. Youngsters really can't resist praising. Just as he finished speaking, he stumbles and falls to the ground. That bastard dug a trap for the horse. There are actually horse tripping ropes. You guys are too vicious. Do you think this is a battlefield? Where's your sportsmanship? Watching from the back of the field, I touch my nose and don't say a word. It seems that I remembered it when we were chatting last night, so I mentioned it to Renee. I didn't think that they would really do it. Looks like Rule 643 has been confirmed. You are not allowed to tamper with the field before the match. Every match, there are 40 to 50 new ways to cheat. The current football rules are as thick as a phone book. I reckon that if they continue messing around like this, when the final version of the rules is confirmed, just the rule book alone will fill up a bookshelf. When the time comes for the new players to go on the field, they will first have to take a written examination of the rules. If they don't score 60 points, they're not allowed to go on the field. After the written examination, they will be tested on the field. They'll have to dribble the ball, turn the corner, scheme, etc. If they don't pass the examination, they can forget about killing the instructor. After that, they will give you a C photo. If you don't die in football for 10 years, they will give you a B photo. If you're a superstar, they can give you an A photo. Of course, I can simply and crudely stipulate what they can only do, but that would be meaningless. In any case, it is entertainment. This kind of lively messing around is more interesting. Furthermore, it seems that they have long treated this football competition as a brainstorm, thinking of all sorts of ways to deal dirty tricks to their opponents as the way to win. What was originally a pure physical exercise has now become a comprehensive competition where both physical and mental strength are equal. I can't wait to see how the football in this other world will develop. No matter what it will become in the end, at least it will be better than that killer tennis ball in Killer Soldiers. Thinking of the 2 failed attempts, I break out in a cold sweat. I have stipulated what they can only do in those 2 events and sealed off most of the loopholes. But in the end, the football competition developed in a strange direction. Since I can only serve according to the rules, I will swing my racket with all my strength. Take this, human and pet, as one white whale serve. The swing of a young Aurora Knight is very elegant. The swing of the snow giant after transforming is very powerful. However, looking at the tennis ball that shatters steel on the spot, if it isn't for the fact that it is off the mark, someone might have died on the spot. It is time to show you my true skills. Take this, vanishing magic ball. Out of the millions of golden balls, only one is real. Golden Ball, your sister. It is obviously a gold-ranked bow and multi-arrow. What do you mean by only one of them is real? What is with the tennis balls that litter the ground after the ball lands? Casio, make it disappear for me. Take this, the blade slashes the flesh, the heart slashes the soul. Razor serve. Do you think that just because you say that it is a razor, it is a razor? Where are your balls? I can only see the sword chi. Just because you use your racket to throw the sword chi, others can't see it. I know this move as well. Take this whirlwind chop serve. Let's see if you die or not. It is fortunate that the balls are specially made from dragon skin. Otherwise, they would have long been smashed into smithereens by their brute force. Very quickly, no one plays these 2 games anymore. After all, other than those few perverts, everyone still treasures their lives. After that, I summed up the lesson. Due to the rigid rules, I can only increase my strength when serving and receiving the ball. In the end, each ball is heavier than the one before, and each ball is stranger than the one before. In the end, it is only a matter of time before someone dies. Let's forget about the killer tennis ball. It should be safer for the players and spectators to shift our attention to how to cheat. However, reality has already proven that safety is relative. If one is forced into a corner, there will be Nash's tooth, Malone's elbow, Suarez's tooth, Suarez's hand, and so on. However, no matter what happens, at the very least, everyone loves to play. This shows that this strange football game still has a future. Who knows, if it were to spread to the mage country, there would be a group of mages riding on brooms and playing basketball in the air. Then, there would be someone in charge of hitting the opponent down from the broom. There seems to be such a thing in my memory. It was invented by a mage from another world. I think it's called Quidditch. While I was searching through my memories and spacing out, the French team picked up the ball and passed it in front of us. Then, a knight powerfully volleyed the ball. Snow breath wall of ice. The ice sword descended, and the entire front of the goal was blocked by an ice wall. The French team's shot was unable to enter the ice wall at all and was directly deflected by the ice wall. It was obvious that this was cheating. This method of piling up obstacles in front of the goal would definitely be banned in the future, and it could only be used once. Rule 644. You are not allowed to tamper with the field's terrain during a match. Damn it, there's one less loophole for me to take advantage of. While I was smiling at my dejected enemies and destroying their confidence, I was feeling depressed that it was getting harder and harder to find loopholes. In the next second, a sudden thunderstorm shattered all of my ice walls. Snow Breath Wall of Ice is a 4th circle spell. He doesn't have much magic power, so he can only cast it a few times. Don't be discouraged, everyone. Continue. Kolos's shout immediately boosted the morale of the entire team. However, I frowned. Of course, it wasn't because of the group of youngsters who were charging madly in front of me. Rule 645. The spectators are not allowed to interfere in the situation of the match. Even the cheerleaders are here to help. This is too much. Kolos, who was wearing a short skirt, was pushed to the position of cheerleader by the crowd. However, she had always wanted to be on the field. At this moment, Renee, who was dribbling the ball, was already in front of me. However, I didn't have any intention of stopping her. Ouch, it hurts. My tail is bent from the impact. Yes, the reason why I wasn't worried at all was because of my gold medal defender, Bayfeng. Her ult. With him around, breaking through the goal wasn't a strenuous task. The first thing you have to deal with is the endless underhanded tricks beneath his thick skin. This time, I only stepped on his tail. I realized that he intentionally extended his tail to the feet of others. This fellow just laid on the field and pretended to be injured, then red handkerchief. How could he know, who had been bribed, missed this opportunity? A red handkerchief turned the situation around once again. The presence of this referee was simply too strong. The boos from the side of the field resounded through the clouds. Rule 646. If one side strongly disagrees, through the votes of the audience, the referee will be allowed to be replaced. While both sides were messing around, the match was already nearing its end. The national team was leading 30-9. You didn't see it wrong. It is much easier to score a goal like this than in a normal match. It's time to end it. If we don't end it soon, the French team's goal tally would reach double digits. Referee, let's make a substitution. I'll go down. Let Grim go up. Just as he said that, the field, which was still in an uproar just a moment ago, turned silent. Then, the moment a tall figure stepped onto the field, the surrounding spectators collectively took a few steps back. After all, his appearance on the field a week ago was simply too shocking. At that time, I shouted, "This is the crucial moment. Everyone go up together and get rid of them." That fellow actually pressed a button on the spot. Then boom, boom, the entire field and all the players on it were sent flying. Although he controlled the gunpowder very well and almost no one was injured, the chili powder and pepper were not easy to deal with. After the smoke lingered, many people had red and swollen eyes and coughed for 2 to 3 days. At that time, Grim was beaten into a pig's head and was immediately demoted from a main player to a substitute. Afterwards, I found out that because I mentioned that the field was like a battlefield and that we had to be prepared in advance, that fellow actually used it as a battlefield. The night before, he dug a hole in the field and arranged 900 small goblin bombs evenly on the field. As a result, the explosion design was ingenious. Although no one was seriously injured, it was inevitable that the match would be suspended for 3 days. Even many spectators were caught up in it. Although the use of explosives on the field was now prohibited, everyone was reminded of the previous tragedy when they saw his towering figure. It was still fresh in their memories. Grim, I'll leave it to you. Get rid of them. Grim replaced me. My large body might be suitable for the goalkeeper position, but in reality, Grim doesn't even know how to defend a goal. I didn't ask him to go up to be the goalkeeper. Right now, my main goal is to quickly find a safe place to escape. Don't worry, everyone. This time, I didn't bring any explosives. Boom. This lie only lasted for 2 seconds before the unlucky deer was directly blown away. Boom! The second bomb actually landed in the spectator stands. This time, the spectators had no interest in watching the match and immediately scattered. The players didn't just stand there stupidly. Amidst the rumbling explosions and the background of the players flying around, the match ended prematurely, as usual. The next day, this kind of dramatic match ending was still a hot topic among everyone. The figure of the sinner hanging upside down on the field became the target of everyone's disdain. It's all that bastard's fault. I lost everything. What did you bet? The French team won? Then you really deserve to lose. No, the national team is too shameless. As long as dirty tricks are allowed, the French team can't win even if they have twice the number of players. I only bet that the French team will score more than 10 goals in the end. I also bet that. It was so close. It was just 1 goal short. What a pity. But it seems that a lot of people chose that, and they were all furious. You guys don't understand. The target of my bet this time was the ball game being blown up by Grimm, and I got it. The odds are 10 times. Damn, you can even guess that. You're too good. But can such a bet be made? Not to mention, there's also the teeth of Suarez bet option. As long as someone bites on the field, it's considered a win. Someone bet on it last time. This time, I also bet on that, but unfortunately, I didn't get it. Amazing. You dare to bet on it with such a small probability, and you even got it. But this time, the stadium explosion only gave you 10 times the return. Surprisingly, it's a bit low. Yeah, it seems like there's another guy who placed a huge bet on this option. I think he even bet on France's team will end in an explosion within 10 goals. He alone swept away 90% of the bets, which was why the odds were lowered in a dark room. The lucky man who made a big bet looked at the mountain of gold coins in front of him and laughed proudly. Stop laughing. It's time to split the loot. I looked around. As my partners, Ingo, Beifong, and Rene were all here. Their eyes were filled with a thirst for profit. Ingo, yours 1/5. You have worked hard on preparing the explosion and refereeing. Ingo laughed heartily as he kept his money pouch. To goblins, there is nothing more delightful than counting gold coins. Let's continue working together next time. Let's earn big money together. I nodded my head with a smile, but I didn't intend to tell him that due to his excessive actions on the field, he was stripped of his refereeing rights. The next referee to split the loot with me might very well be the Goblin Prince Kabbalah. Beifong, yours 1/5. You did well on the field, but I know, I won't forget Brother Grimm, who took the blame. As a boss, you must be loyal. Otherwise, how can you convince the masses? Leave the rest to me. I will make sure that Brother Grimm is satisfied. Although I didn't know when he became the publicly acknowledged boss of the gentlemen, I still nodded my head. As long as it doesn't touch on my hobbies, from a certain perspective, the extremely cunning Beifong is reliable and nimble. He is more trustworthy than anyone else. Rene 1/20. Next time, you must be more serious when you fake the ball. That expression and action were too fake. You nearly saw through me, you know? Big Brother Roland, didn't we agree on 1/5? Stupid. How can it be good for a child to have so much money? I will help you keep it safe and return it to you when you grow up. Oh, okay. Perhaps it was because the princess was just playing around. She wasn't angry at all, even though she was obviously cheated by black gold. Right, Big Brother Roland? Big Sister Kelly made a bet with me too? She bet that you would definitely confiscate my portion, and she even bet on the reason that children shouldn't squander their money. She really understands me. Oh, no. Is your Big Brother Roland that kind of person? Suddenly, I realized that something was wrong with the situation. Wait, how did Kelly know? You already said that your expression was too fake, so she found out. Renee hits her head lightly with her small hand and playfully sticks out her tongue. The moment she says that, Beifong and Ingo grab their gold coins and intend to escape. However, the door to the room opens by itself. As expected, Lord, you are really unbelievable. When I first heard of it, I thought that someone was slandering you. How can you act like a fair and just god envoy? Kolo's face is filled with dismay and shock, as though she is looking at her disappointing child walking on the wrong path. It wasn't easy for Momo to save up his fortune. It's you, Bad Roland. But as long as Momo hugs little Rolo to sleep tonight, I will forget about it. Hee hee. Momo promises that she won't do anything. Really, at the very most, she will only take off his clothes. That Momo, wipe off your saliva before saying those words. She won't do anything? I would be a fool if I believed you. Little Roland, hee hee, to think that you would lead Renee astray. Have you forgotten about your big sister Kelly's methods? Big sister Kelly definitely isn't venting her anger on him for losing money. That, big sister Kelly, I will compensate you for the amount you lost. Don't smile at me like that. It's scary. My armor, the Mistler Mithril alloy full body armor that I almost died for. Lord, can you return it to me? The door is already blocked by the furious debt collector. On the familiar face, there's also a familiar angry expression. Lowering my head, I ponder for a long while before speaking. You have to be rational when watching a match. Betting on matches will ruin your life. Also, humans die in pursuit of wealth, as birds die in pursuit of food. You want me to refund your money? Right? Ingo and Beifong are about to escape, so please don't let them off. Lastly, don't slap my face. I still have to meet someone tomorrow. Rule 647. Personnel related to the match are not allowed to participate in the organizing of matches. Rule 648. Never allow the greedy goblin to be the referee, and even more so, don't allow the cunning Roland to participate in the organizing of matches. Goblin and Roland are never allowed to participate in matches. By system, I don't need you to summarize for me. Chapter 124. After the joyous play, naturally comes the intense daily work. There is a more important reason why we are staying in this cramped base. This is the cradle of the future Ottoman Empire's superweapon, the air fleet. Just looking at the equipment, industrial foundation, craftsmen, and engineers, they're the best in the entire continent. According to the original plan, the Borealis should be able to float in 2 weeks. However, is only floating. Even though the difference between a semi-finished product and a completed product is like the difference between heaven and earth, due to the existence of the contract, we can only sail it out and find an opportunity to use other spare parts to complete it. Of course, due to the difference in industrial standards, it is impossible to complete it here. Due to the invasion of the sea folk, an unforeseen event occurred in the execution of the contract. However, it unexpectedly gave us sufficient time. If we don't cherish it, it would be a waste. Thus, the moment we entered the base, I gave the order to complete the construction of the Borealis with high standards and high quality. A poor working environment will only make the workers hate their employers. They will only think of ways to deal with their jobs. On the other hand, a joyous working environment is beneficial to the workers' enthusiasm and productivity. At the same time, it is also beneficial to the birth of inspirations. In order to allow everyone to live and work here peacefully, I thought of ways to raise the working conditions here. For example, raising the standard of food, cultural performances, football matches. In order to raise the standard of food, I even sneaked out from the underwater exit to fish a few times. With the help of Tracy's Song of Tides, the sea folk might not even know how their shoal of fish disappeared. Even if they think of poaching, they would only think of other tribes. The effects of these entertainment activities are extremely good. After all, entertainment is too scarce for the people of this world. The only flaw is that it seems to be a little overdone. Not only did it make the engineers so happy that they forgot about their duties, they were also unable to focus on their work. But very quickly, with a large group of undead assisting us, the engineers who recovered from their injuries taking the lead, and our gentleman and knight helping us, the progress increased once again. I didn't make many changes to the original design of the ship. After all, it isn't my specialty. However, as for the weapon system, I have my own wishes. 8 mage towers and 32 cannons? How can that be enough? Give me 16 mage towers and 64 cannons. No, I want 30 mage towers and 100 heavy cannons. Insufficient energy? Don't worry, I have a plan. If we don't have enough space, why don't you build turrets on top of cannons? Why don't you build smaller turrets between the turrets and the turrets? Don't think about symmetry. We need more turrets and bigger cannons. Remember, you newbie engineers, don't pursue those useless aesthetics and decorations. Put all your intelligence on how to increase the number of turrets and increase the caliber of the cannons. Repeat after me. More is beauty, big is good, caliber is justice, turrets are truth. Weak RPG, die 300 times. What? Don't you know what an RPG is? He's a fool who rides on explosives and shoots himself out as a meat egg. All right, so far, my preaching of multiple cannon turrets has been going rather smoothly. At the very least, as the number of cannon turrets on the Aurora Borealis increases, the warships become more and more deformed and filled with the beauty of industry. More and more engineers are able to sense the beauty of industry. While working, there were already engineers shouting, "Billions of stars, billions of turrets. Without turrets, there is nothing. All turrets are equal, but some turrets are more equal than others." I praise you, the great cannon turrets. But there are always people who remain unmoved. As long as we can solve the impossible problem of energy supply, the modification of the cannon turrets is still understandable. However, there is really no need for some additional work. If not for the additional decorations that you added, it would have been completed by now. The chief engineer of the Aurora Borealis, Piacenza, is a rather inflexible old scholar. He doesn't understand the modification plan that I added at the last minute. Decorations? Indeed, according to the traditional thinking of shipbuilding, to sew the precious dragon scales and dragon skin on the deck of the ship and insert the rare magic gems into the core of the ship, other than flaunting one's wealth, I really can't think of any use. This is a typical example of a layman leading an expert. In the eyes of the various experts, there will most likely be problems in the end. However, I am indeed not building a ship, and I don't even know how to build a ship. Undead creation. From a certain point of view, I have always treated it as a theoretical and systematic science. Just like how modern Western medicine starts from the dissection of corpses and the analysis of the functions of human organs, the necromancers of this world also start from the analysis of corpses. They agree to view the human body as a patchwork of parts, organs. In that world, there are already many technologies such as organ transplants, human body modification, human cloning, and many other technologies. In this world, due to the existence of magic, even a rookie necromancer is crazier than the craziest scientist or surgeon. Transplanting an organ and the like is a piece of cake for them. Finding a pile of parts to put together a person isn't as difficult as the legends say. After all, surgeons still have to consider whether the person can live through the modification surgery. On the other hand, necromancers can make do with life and death. This is also the dividing line between them. As necromancers recognize the importance of the soul, they simply come up with the equation of life equals body plus soul and challenge the authority of the creator without any qualms. If surgeons were to disassemble a person into parts, not to mention whether they can still live after putting them back together, as long as the news gets out, they would probably be charged with murder the next day. If I had to find an analogy, it is just like how a computer is divided into hardware and software. Necromancers also divide life into two parts. The body is the hardware and the soul is the software. As long as the body is able to move under the control of the soul, the process and whether the body and soul are compatible or not, it doesn't matter at all. Thus, just like those DIY computer enthusiasts who love to create strange machines, as long as there is a soul and a body, necromancers can play with it however they want. After countless centuries, there are so many undead creations that they can't be categorized. A high-quality body and a powerful soul is the most beloved creation material of every necromancer. Blasphemy against life, blasphemy against the gods. The only difference between us and the gods is that they're more experienced than us and their technology is superior to ours. However, we will also improve, and one day, we will create an existence that surpasses their creations. The arrogant necromancers say so, and they're doing so. As the most famous expert in undead creation in recent times, I have added a new theory into undead creation, undead evolution theory. Once a rigid body is formed, it is hard for it to evolve by itself. The rigidity of a life form will cause the upper limit of one's strength to be fixed. This is indeed a bottleneck that undead creations can easily meet, but it isn't impossible to break through. My method is to first perfectly combine the body and soul. Then, through the modification of the soul, let the soul, which is driven by intense emotions and desires, in turn drive the body to evolve. Dang, gluttony, Omar, pride, Bastion, wrath, Heloise, greed. The reason why they are able to grow continuously is because they have a powerful and stubborn soul. Although the core of the theory is simple, it isn't that easy to put into practice. I can proudly say that only my 7 deadly sins is able to create a growth-type undead that can grow continuously like a living person, and only I have grasped the core technology. All right, after saying so much, some of you should be able to guess what I intend to do. Yes, I don't know how to build a ship at all, so I intend to turn the Borealis into a living super undead. Precious dragon skin and dragon scales are sewn on the deck and the sides of the ship. They seem like extravagant decorations, but in reality, they are used to summon souls. As for whether intercepting Hydra's soul will incur the wrath of Lady Storm, since I have already offended her, it doesn't matter if I offend her further. Furthermore, she probably won't find out that I am the one who did it. Of course, there isn't much meaning in just summoning souls. The intelligence of sea monsters isn't high, and the soul fragments that are summoned after dying in battle are the most flawed of the flawed, causing severe negative effects. To put it simply, it would lower their intelligence and they would go berserk. Without further processing, they can't be used. So, I intend to give it an operating system, a similarly powerful soul. Marcelet, are you ready? Yes, Lord Roland. Everything is ready. Following my command, the voice of a young man reverberates in the cabin. The moment the Blood Mage Emperor breathed in the poisonous blood, he was destined to die. Taking advantage of the time when the ice temporarily preserved his life, I communicated with him. He still has an unfulfilled wish, which is to continue walking the world as a half-dead. As the price for saving him, if I am able to successfully preserve his soul and give him the power to take revenge, he is willing to serve me for 100 years. And if I am able to help him fulfill his wish, that service will continue indefinitely. Dragon Hunter Damos killed my daughter and wife. I want to take revenge on him and the person behind him. He's already dead? No, the one who died is Damos III, and the one who killed my wife and daughter is his teacher, Damos I. They are a unique inheritance, and the second was once Damos. I don't know where the second and first are, but the Emperor of the Ottoman Empire would definitely know. That family has served the Emperor for generations. All right, before Crow recovers to the point where he can speak, it would be best not to let Marcelet know about him. Of course, since he has accepted my undead modification, there is no need to worry about his loyalty. Turning a semi-god blood mage into a fleshless lich is definitely a waste. Thus, it just so happens that I need a powerful soul to control this warship, and Marcelet also needs power. Thus, the two of us hit it off. In the bridge of the Borealis, Marcelet's lower body has already fused with the bridge, leaving only his upper body outside. The heart of the 9-headed dragon beats, faintly, in front of him. Following the activation of the heart, another set of energy cycle in the huge warship begins. This is the specialty of necromancers. At this moment, Marcelet can already be considered as a type of undead creature. His physical body is still as cold as ice and corroded by poison. Even though he has put on some disguise, it isn't much better. In order to prevent his current yin-yang phase from scaring the children, he took the initiative to wear a mask. He seems to be closing his eyes in deep thought, but a lot of data flashes past his eyes. In reality, he is carrying out control over the situation of the entire warship, making the final adjustments before activating it. However, looking at this man who is working seriously, I was happy that the person whom I entrusted to him is reliable, but for some reason, I fall into depression. Lord, what's wrong? That, I feel a little depressed for some reason. I will be fine after resting for a while. That is all I can say. Do I have to shout my dissatisfaction to the sky and request for a more adorable controller? What a scam. Why is it that everyone else is a cute ship girl who smiles sweetly in sailor attire, but I only have a masked shipboy with a yin-yang face. The will of the universe. Is this appropriate? Can I change? Of course you can. How about Rosemary? She's a great beauty. All right, the will of the universe wouldn't answer such a pointless question, but Heloise wouldn't let go of any chance to attack me. From a yin-yang face to a yin-yang person, after thinking about it, I resolutely refuse. If we were in Rosemary's body right now, why does this sound so awkward? She might use her authority as a ship girl to peek at all the male crew members bathing. Don't insult me. I have my own sense of aesthetics and choices. What's so good about those ugly men? My taste isn't that bad. You only deny that you don't want to look at ugly men? Would you peek at those that are so good-looking? Rosemary's furious roar comes from her phylactery, revealing the wish in her heart. Once again, I rejoice that I didn't make the choice that could possibly lead to a tragedy, choosing Marcelet instead. This time, there's finally a normal person in the gentleman party. Congratulations, congratulations. Right, my lord, the area of dragon skin on the left side of the ship is 17% more than the area on the right side. It's fine. It will automatically correct itself when it is activated. Oh, my lord, my second cannon barrel and the ninth cannon barrel are a little bent. Can you help me straighten them? It shouldn't be. It would be very obvious if the cannon barrel is bent. I won't be wrong. The second cannon barrel is bent by 2% to the right, and the ninth cannon barrel is bent by 0.5% to the left. You'll be able to notice it if you look closely, right? Can the water bucket on the left deck be placed in the middle? The asymmetry makes me feel uncomfortable. Also, can the potted plants on the left and right be balanced? There are 3 more on the left side than on the right side. I'm not used to it. Right? Can you help me straighten the portrait on the wall? It is tilted by 30 degrees. It makes me feel uncomfortable looking at it. Hearing this, I immediately understood. How could there be a normal person in the gentleman party? Recalling the day when the red-robed mage appeared, his neat and meticulous appearance, I came to a sudden realization. So it is a deep form of obsessive-compulsive disorder. All right, the endless nagging of the obsessive-compulsive disorder patient continued. From the patterns on the deck of the ship to the patterns on the sails, from the style of the bow on the cables to the pattern of the crew's uniform, all kinds of unimportant information bombarded me with fatigue. A normal obsessive-compulsive disorder patient would probably only be concerned about himself and his surroundings. However, after Marcelet transformed into a ship, his body expanded countless times. There were too many things for him to be concerned about. It was fine for his obsessive-compulsive disorder to act up, but I, who had to accept his opinion, would suffer. Left and right unbalanced? No way. Left and right unbalanced? Even worse. The left deck is cleaner than the right deck. How can I tolerate that? If you don't clean the right deck, then dirty the left one for me. Your beard isn't shaved and your clothes aren't neat? I can't say any more. Get off the ship. I began to question my decision amidst the incessant buzzing. Should I switch to a gentleman ship girl who might be spying on me? Or should I continue using this nagging, obsessive-compulsive ship boy? Finally, I heard the words I've been waiting for. My lord, the preparations are complete. Should we start? That's great. Cough. Since the preparations are complete, let's cut the nonsense and begin. Following my command, a faint green light enveloped the entire ship. Even though no one was controlling it, the searchlights at the front of the ship suddenly lit up, as if a gigantic beast had opened its eyes. The Borealis had awakened. It was alive. On the ship, a large number of low-level undead were mysteriously melting. They were fusing with the ship's bones and planks, becoming the true skeleton of this gigantic undead beast. Next to the ship's normal energy circulation system, a green liquid was flowing in a transparent pipe. This was the poisonous blood of Hydra, which was also the gigantic beast's new blood circulation system. The dragon skin on the ship was actually slowly spreading. Countless magic runes began to spread on the ship. The gigantic beast's skin and nervous system were also progressing well. The unrelated personnel had already retreated, leaving only Heloise and I. Meanwhile, Rosemary's phylactery was constantly nagging about, "This isn't magic. How is this possible? This doesn't conform to the classic theory of undead creation and other nonsense. What made me feel helpless was that the great engineer Piacenza on the other side was nagging about, "This isn't scientific. This is too illogical. This is completely against all theories of shipbuilding." It was naturally impossible for a living creature to have two sets of systems. As the roaring, nine-headed phantom began to fuse with the ship, the dragon blood circulation system and the energy pipes began to fuse. The dragon's skin and scales on the outer edge of the ship were expanding furiously. Very soon, they would become the true outer shell of the ship. The various magic runes inscribed on it would also truly function as nerves and organs. After the sacrifice of the undead creatures, the keel and deck grew thicker and thicker. Countless searchlights and probes were floating in the air. They would become Marsalet's eyes. The mage towers on the ship had an additional layer of dragon skin for defense. Those magic crystal cannons had completely changed their appearance. The cannons had an additional carving of a dragon's mouth. Judging from the dark green glow that was emitting from them, it was definitely not just their appearance that had changed. Before the Borealis was awakened, it was still an assembled ship that was full of patches. However, after being awakened, the green dragon skin became the most extravagant paint job. The Borealis that retracted its metal outer shell made it seem like a super battleship, as well as a breathing dragon. 25 mage towers, 27 green dragon corrosive-type magic crystal cannons, 127 heavy engineering cannons. It wasn't that they didn't want to install more, but they had already piled up to 3 levels, and there was no space for them. 1 dragon breath cannon each at the bow and stern of the ship. After this, living dragon used its heart and flesh to provide sufficient energy for the weapon system. This floating battleship was destined to be unparalleled in the world. "That's great, Marsalet." "Oh no, I should call you Emmy now." "Yes, Your Highness. Envy is at your service." Can you help me straighten the cannons now? They seem to have become even more bent." "Right, I'm a little sorry. Your 5th button seems to have been buttoned incorrectly. Can you change it back? It's really uncomfortable." Chapter 125. When the door into the water was opened, the water level of the entire river dropped slightly. Fortunately, the heavy rain and the tornado created a new cycle, slowing the reaction of the sea folk to the changes in the water level. When the gigantic warship in the shadows floated to the surface of the water, we were shocked by the changes in the city. The city of rain, Falohi, lived up to its name. In the 2.5 months that we were working on the final upgrade of the Borealis, countless sea folk arrived here. The city that was originally a human city had become a dream city for the sea folk to enjoy a beautiful new life. Heloise's clone was our best eyes. Finding a transparent slime in the water was an impossible task. She had sufficient time to set up countless eyes in the city. The once magnificent King City was still King City. The only difference was that there was a new batch of masters. The White Whale tribe was originally just a large tribe in the coastal region. However, due to the meritorious service they had achieved in this raid, as well as the great prestige they gained after their great victory, they naturally became the masters of this new kingdom. Argus the First was the new name of the gigantic White Whale Man. Dasos's coronation ceremony had been reused. The Whale Man, whose original name was Argus, had officially ascended to the throne. The Platinum royalty in the Sea Country had moved from an unrealistic fantasy to reality. He and his family had become the new ruler of Falohi, under the protection and rewards of Lady Storm. Even if the new tribe was many times stronger than him, they were still his people. Falohi was the name of the city, as well as the name of the future Sea Country. The guardian goddess of this country was Lady Storm and a water elemental goddess. The layout of the entire city was arranged in a tiered manner. As the price to pay for becoming a citizen of the City of Rain, the new tribe would be divided into districts according to the race of the tribe members, such as the Fishman District, the Naga District, the Sea Beastman District, the Sea Giants District, and so on. The leaders of the original tribe would enter the royal city and become the new nobles who were loyal to the Platinum royalty. In a sense, this was a fundamental change to the nomadic lifestyle of the tribes in the past. It was also a forceful disintegration of the power in the hands of the tribal leaders. Therefore, Even though the new life was very attractive, not every tribal chief was willing to submit to others. It was not uncommon for tribes to come and then leave, but even if they left, there would be many who left the tribe without permission in the middle of the journey. In this magic world that was similar to the Middle Ages, the permanent population and the flow of people were always the foundation of the rise and fall of a city. Soon, more and more members of the oceanic race moved in, making the newly born-reigned city more and more lively. Even though the two armies were still in a state of war at the border, the sea tribe's new life in the city had already begun. First of all, the market had already opened, and the most popular products were the daily necessities left behind by the surface residents. Worthless porcelain, fresh fruits, and waterproof silk could all be exchanged for precious pearls and gems of equal weight. The many years of accumulation of the tribes that had just arrived couldn't be underestimated. Most of the rare treasures of the sea were indiscernible, but judging from the vigorous magic ripples, there were quite a few valuable items. However, their prices were laughably low. A myth-ranked sea dragon's dragon pearl was actually sold for only 2 rolls of silk. This was equivalent to exchanging stones for gems. Even turning stones into gold might not be as fast as this. I was tempted by such a high profit margin. If it wasn't for the fact that I was worried that there would be unexpected problems, I would have long sent Tracy to exchange for more treasures. I had a deep understanding of the temperament of merchants, and I had no doubt that as long as the news were spread, many merchants would risk their lives to trade with the sea tribe. By then, the technology and products they would be able to exchange for would make up for the shortcomings of the sea tribe. Other than daily necessities, the other best-selling item in the market were the various weapons on the ground. Even though the All-End Empire's alchemy weapons and high-quality weapons were immediately seized by the White Whale tribe to equip their own warriors, the ordinary sea folk who used wooden, stone, and bone weapons like the long swords, spears, and cleavers were a qualitative leap in quality for the ordinary sea folk who used wooden, stone, and bone weapons. In the past few days, the first to reopen were the blacksmiths. Due to the massacre and flooding during the siege of the city, there weren't many precious blacksmiths, craftsmen, and alchemists who survived. They also met with many troubles. Among the sea tribe, there were only a few amphibious races who knew a little about smithing. Thus, anti-rust treatment of the blueprints became their top priority. However, judging from the long queues in the blacksmith's area, the flooding seemed to have caused their craftsmanship to return to the most primitive era. There was still a long way to go in this aspect. However, for the sea tribe, this was already a huge improvement that was hard to come by. Every night, there would be a bonfire and banquet on the waterproof platform. Even though the ordinary fishmen probably wouldn't even get a piece of cooked meat, it was enough to make them go wild with joy, as if they were celebrating a festival. Although it was still primitive and there were many inadequacies, this new city was developing in the direction of a centralized kingdom, just as the sea tribe had predicted. It was getting stronger every day, and countless sea tribe members were arriving every day. The newly arrived sea tribe would eventually reach the border of the City of Rain and fight to expand their living space. It was easy to predict that this would become the first battlefield of the Eternal War. Fortunately or unfortunately, the Ottoman Empire was indeed a mega-empire with a rich foundation. The humiliation of losing their capital was the most direct order to mobilize for war. Soon, defensive lines were re-established, and reinforcement from the various local nobles arrived on time. No one could say for sure how strong the army, which was determined to take back the capital, would become. However, in terms of war foundation and overall national strength, I still believe that the Ottoman Empire would have the last laugh. Very soon, the war for living space would begin once again, and it was destined to be cruel. No matter who the final victor was, this place wouldn't be peaceful for a short period of time. All of the Ottoman Empire's attention would be drawn into this. For us, it was difficult to say that both sides were friends. Our only hope was that we wouldn't be dragged into this, especially since we were currently right under the sea tribe's nose. The wind and rain that day had obstructed the sea tribe's vision. In the eyes of the sea tribe, the fall of Hydra was mostly due to Lone 2 and the Forbidden Spell. Our existence was probably still a blind spot for the sea tribe. Even so, we didn't dare to stay here for too long. It was foreseeable that as the sea folk gathered here, more and more power of faith would become food for the Queen of the Storms. When the Queen of the Storms really turned this new city into her own divine land, when the Queen of the Storms church and altar reached a certain density, the will and attention of the Queen of the Storms would probably stay here permanently. Perhaps this underwater base would be able to block the prying eyes of mortals, but when it came to the sight of a true god, I really didn't have any confidence. The earlier we set sail, the safer we would feel. And so, on the 7th day after the Borealis completed its transformation into an undead, when this newborn undead had begun to get used to its new body, and when the first batch of weapon systems were barely usable, we set sail. An underwater channel opened up for the ship to enter the water, and the 300-meter-long ship dove into the water, slowly advancing. Dark waves rippled beneath the water. Of course, we did meet some sea tribe members along the way, but they were blown away by the dark currents before they could even touch our ship. When this flood dragon left the water and rose into the air, leaving behind a gigantic whirlpool where it had been, and the mage tower on the ship still maintained its invisibility effect, cheers rang out from within the Borealis. After all, no matter how impressive the design was, actual combat was the only way to test its effectiveness. We'll leave from the Eastern Ottoman Empire and enter the water at the Eastern Estuary. That should be the safest place. Then, we'll head up along the coastline and take off from northern Telos. Then we'll fly diagonally in a straight line, and we'll arrive at the Eastern Principality. This is the best route that all of us have agreed upon after repeated discussions. Why must we enter the water? Can't we just fly straight? If we were to fly straight to the Eastern Principality, we would have to enter the airspace of a few super empires. I don't think that they wouldn't be prepared for the threat from the sky. Even invisible flying unit isn't anything rare. Do you intend to meet their Dragon Knight? Furthermore, if the news of the floating warship were to leak out, there was a hidden meaning in Kelly's words, and I immediately understood it. Some things should be kept a secret for as long as possible. If we were to reveal it now, there would be a lot of trouble in the future. Kelly's suggestion was based on a risk assessment, and we could still try our luck. On the other hand, the chief engineer of the Borealis, Piacenza's suggestion was based on reality, and it was obviously more practical and persuasive. From the performance of a new ship, it isn't recommended for us to go on a long journey for the first time. After flying for a certain distance, we do need to make some short-term adjustments to the equipment to rectify the problems that have been exposed. Looking at the situation of our ship, entering the water is the most suitable choice. Furthermore, we don't have much supplies left. It should be more convenient for us to use a small boat to resupply at the coastal port of the Casilo Kingdom. Actually, I didn't have any complaints about taking a longer route, but I was a little hesitant about entering the sea again. Although the system was unreliable, it was a classic example of good things never coming true. Towards its warning of not entering the sea, I still took it to heart. Warning: Lady Storm has remembered you. Unless absolutely necessary, please do not get close to the sea, and even more so, do not enter the sea. Of course, if you insist, you can try killing other sea monsters and true gods' avatars. As long as you are in the sea, I guarantee that the rewards will be better than this. Lady Storm, the sea folk, pirates, and the Lycomeda living on the sea would respectfully address her as the Queen of Storms. She is a member of the malevolent gods of chaos, and her divine concept includes storm, tempest, and she is also the guardian god of a portion of the sea folk. Although she has always aimed for the divine concept of the sea god, there hasn't been any signs of success in the past thousands of years. The current sea god is Oswia, an antique who survived from the ancient times. From a certain perspective, he is also the descendant of the ancient water elemental god Aelos. In the Order faction, this sea god is famous for being low-key. Perhaps they might be able to form a relationship in private, but I don't think that he would still give face to Lady Storm after the Eternal Holy War starts. Detecting a ship entering the sea, even the sea god Oswia is incapable of doing so, not to mention Lady Storm, who is a sea god who doesn't have the existence of the sea in her divine concept. However, I still don't dare to let my guard down. Must we enter the sea again? Yes, the failure rate of the floating engine is over 17%. Even if the lads work overtime, they won't be able to maintain it for long. We have to stop the engine for maintenance. All right, then let's prepare for battle. The imaginary enemy is sea monsters. Let's use that Hydra from the other day as our imaginary enemy. Even without the system notification, if Lady Storm really comes looking for trouble, then there is an 80% chance that we will meet a sea monster. After all, that queen has another nickname, Sea Monster Empress. She has quite a few sea monsters under her command. We can completely disregard normal sea monsters. Do you think that we will meet Hydra everywhere? Fine, you're the boss. You make the call. Although the others felt that it was unnecessary, based on my understanding of my own luck, as well as the system notification, it wouldn't be too much to prepare. Before I enter the sea, I still have some matters to attend to. Since we can't play soccer on the ship, those fellows are really bored to death. How many times has Ingo's alchemy laboratory exploded? I heard that yesterday afternoon, they froze a piece of the deck to play ice hockey. Aren't they afraid of being whipped off the ship? Forget it, I have some matters to settle anyway. I'll just scare them a little. Being on the same ship in times of crisis is a kind of fate. But when the crisis is over, being on the same ship requires a reason. Common interests? Common ideals? Regardless of what it is, since we still hope to walk together, since we still want to call each other comrades, and since we need to use something to unite everyone's strength together, there must be a core and a goal. Eating, drinking, and having fun can also be considered as a goal. But if we were to build an organization around that, then it would most likely be a bunch of scattered sand. But in this aspect, I have long prepared for it. Why should I be the only one worrying about the future of the world? Since we are all on the same ship, let me tell you about the possibility of the ship sinking in the future. I started my explanation with these words. But as expected, I saw the nonchalant expression of those fellows. If the sky collapses, there will be tall ones to hold it up. If the ship sinks, at most, we can just go ashore. What's the big deal? Asking me how I was able to read so much information from their expressions? Those bastards have already said it out loud. I am a siren. Sinking the ship isn't a problem for me. It is just that it is a little troublesome to bring along my collection. Actually, I have been training hard during this period of time in the base. Right now, my swimming skills are pretty good. Big brother, don't be fooled by my 4 hooves. Actually, I have learned how to swim recently. Furthermore, I have already removed the horseshoes, so I will definitely be able to float. When the time comes, you will just have to sit on my back. Hey, did you hear about the latest business opportunity? The opportunity to earn big money is here. We should stock up on life buoys and driftwood. Stupid. What's the use of stockpiling them now? We should purchase all kinds of life buoys from the crew members and sell them to the original owner when the ship sinks. That way, we will be able to make a fortune. Fool! How can we only sell to the original owner? As long as they are willing to pay, we can even sell fishmen and sea monsters. The conversation between Ingo and Kabbalah is filled with the stench of money. The two of them are actually considering purchasing life buoys from the crew members and selling them to the other party when the ship sinks. If gunpowder comes into contact with water, it won't work. Should we prepare some waterproof containers? Grimbrat, stop thinking about your precious explosives. You should first consider whether your heavy armor can float or not. Are we going to take off the Silver War song again? Lord, will the sinking be too sudden? Will we lose our luggage? If it is really lost, will he be able to salvage it? Ever since Diana got the mithril alloy full body armor from my hands and even got a mage to enchant it, Diana has been wearing the armor all day. Not only does she not find it hot, she even gave the armor such a name. Now that she hears that the ship is about to sink, the first thing that comes to her mind is her precious armor. Big Brother Roland, are you worried that the ship will sink? Don't worry about it. When the time comes, we will use our strength to freeze the surface of the water. That way, we should be able to get everyone onto the ice to seek refuge. As long as no one dies, we can accept any loss. All right, Renee's consolation at the end, should it be considered as a stab in the back? Everyone is discussing fervently but no one asks why the ship will sink. They are only exchanging their experiences in escaping, as though the sinking of the ship is already a foregone conclusion. I shake my head helplessly. These fellows are too unique. I should have guessed that this would be the outcome. The ship that I'm talking about isn't the Borealis that we are standing on. It is Aichi, the Aichi continent. Perhaps you might find it hard to believe, but in reality, our world is about to be destroyed, just as everyone is staring at me with widened eyes. After all, according to common sense, those who talk about the end of the world at the drop of a hat are either evil cultists or lunatics. But while everyone's eyes widen, I don't intend to continue speaking. After I finish my opening speech, I leave. The crystal ball that was placed on the table starts to display the scene that I prepare beforehand. Aichi's 7 calamities. From the start of this holy war, our world will encounter 7 destructive calamities, and we will always be in danger. The source is the never-ending holy war. Now, the horn of the holy war has sounded once more. I am afraid that this is destined to be the last holy war. The crystal ball contains a promotional lesson that I prepare beforehand. The contents of the lesson were carefully prepared by me. This is the information on the upcoming war, but it is only the appetizer. The civil war of the humans, the rebellion of the elemental gods, the invasion of the undead, the invasion of the demons, the possibility of an all-out war between the surface and the underground. Perhaps some of them have already predicted that the holy war wouldn't be easy, but it is impossible for them to be as detailed as my information. Talking about the invasion of the undead, I can directly tell which undead planes are preparing for war and when they are expected to attack. Talking about the demon army, I have the evidence and information provided by Eliza here. The conspiracy of the elemental gods is right in front of us. As for the Underground Alliance army attacking the surface, it isn't a secret anymore. Only detailed information and data would be convincing. And the following picture is the breakthrough that I expected. Oh, what is that? Why did the dwarves' mining city, Halos, turn into ruins? I just went there last year, and the place is still bustling with activity. In front of me is a picture of the ruins after the army massacred the city. The picture is vivid and lifelike, and the precision of it far surpasses the limits of drawing. This isn't a picture of this world. It is a picture taken from an illustrated guide. A serene? Impossible. How can the beautiful Evernight forest turn into such a state? Galar Highlands, my rich and beautiful hometown. How can it turn into a black pool of blood and a land of filth? Who did it? The elven capital that has turned into ruins, the human plains that has been corrupted into a land of the undead, the demon army massacring on the surface. The massacre of races and the destruction of countries can be seen everywhere, and all kinds of visions of the future that would destroy the worldview are presented one by one. I swear on the name of the Holy Light that this is a vision of the future that I obtained through certain means. If we don't do anything, I'm afraid that it will become history. The majestic Holy Light proves the truth in my words. Just as they are shocked and even worried about the future that is filled with destruction, I throw out an even more shocking piece of information. And these tragedies are just the beginning. Those who die in it can be considered as the lucky ones because they won't have to witness the destruction that would leave them in despair. This holy war is destined to have no victors. The final outcome will be the destruction of the entire world. At this moment, the picture cuts to the scene that I requested. It is an aerial shot from outer space. The entire continent is split into countless pieces and innumerable dimensional doors open wide. This is the result of the 2 creator goddesses' all-out battle, and the powerful life forms that are able to survive to the very end are screaming and cursing as they welcome their final despair. Before the final judgment day, all lives are treated equally. No one is spared, no one is saved, no one is immortal, and the final outcome is complete and equal destruction. Perhaps the 2 creator goddesses will be able to restart the creation of the world, but the life forms of the old generation won't be able to see that day. They have already met their end in this final calamity. In order to avoid the worst possible outcome, I've been making preparations since a long time ago, and I've also obtained some progress. But now, I feel that I'm too weak by myself. I need your help. I need your strength to prevent the final judgment day from coming.